Today's episode is brought to you by elitefts.com. Founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help Elite FTS support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of us for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, Elite FTS has it.
What's going on? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting from the middle of the Elite FTS weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. What's going on, guys? Today, my guest is Marek Hedlesky, right? No, Hedlesky, right? Because I was practicing earlier, but I was practicing incorrectly. Before we get into the show, I want to remind you guys about the crew, the support network that we have for Table Talk. If you go to the description, you'll find the link there. We're currently somewhere around 60, 70 members right now. We're working to get to 200. When we get to 200, we'll start putting out exclusive content just for you guys. When you join now or become a member now or support now or whatever I want to say for the call to action, you get 14 of my ebooks for absolutely no cost, 15% off Table Talk coffee and all Elite FTS apparel, including the limited edition apparel. And that's that. Aside from that, Elite FTS obviously is a sponsor of the podcast. Use the discount code TABLETALK to save 10% off any of your first orders. With that behind us, now we'll get into the show. Mike has a pretty deep powerlifting background in the, I just want to say raw single ply IPF, kind of right around there. IPF's a weird conversation, so we definitely are going to have that one, right? So 13X Arnold Sports invitee, 10 times IPF World Team. 2012 broke the deadlift IPF World Record. Is that right?
It was very close, but yeah, it wasn't exactly there.
Close to that. So
sure, let's say why not?
One of the main reasons I wanted to have him on is when I did a call out last year, maybe, or earlier this year. Whenever, who knows? Time is time. I don't want to sound like our vice president. Time is time. And, because it's time.
That was good.
He was one of the most requested. So, and I've followed his stuff over the years, and we're going to have some fun today. There's no doubt about that. And the most important thing I think is going to tie into the people listening is that you are a lifetime drug-free. And, what the hell? Raw, right? Well, I get mixed up because raw has now become like multiply, where you got single ply, multiply, and unlimited. Now you got like raw, classic raw, modern raw, and then raw with wraps, and then I don't know what
It's so funny. You can't even like bring yourself to say the words like that. And it's funny, but like it's super interesting. Yeah, I still have to ask other people what the difference between raw and modern raw is, and sometimes I feel like a dinosaur talking to people about my first meet, because like my first meet, like I've predominantly competed in USAPL and IPF. The last couple of years I branched out and been doing some other stuff just because I like to support meet directors that I like more than anything. But the first competition that I ever did, it was a 24-hour weigh-in. You could wear knee wraps for raw and everything. It was a USAPL meet. So like some dude showed up with it looked like 3 jean jackets sewn together that he had turned on backwards and hit like a 520 bench press. And then that was on the website as a raw record in Maryland for a couple of years. I think it was like, oh, that's Ted. We just let him do whatever he wants, But like, it's funny how like the gear stuff has changed.
Yeah.
Especially with stuff like that. It's really interesting. But yeah, I'm still not clear what the difference between raw and like modern raw and I don't know, all the new divisions and stuff. It's crazy.
His audio is kind of coming in and out of my headphones.
Yeah.
It's just completely cut off.
All right. So what do we do? Just keep rolling?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. All right. So when 2005 is when you did your first meet, right? Or is it 2006?
2005.
And what caused that?
That's really funny. I played just team sports and football and like all kinds of stuff growing up. And a buddy of mine had actually just got cut from the football team from the university that we went to, started going to like a powerhouse gym nearby, saw this guy doing good mornings with chain hanging off the bar and like yelling, bald head, goatee, like screaming at himself and everything. And my buddy was over there lifting with another guy, and they were pretty strong. So the guy that was over there doing the good mornings went up to him, told him about powerlifting. There was a meet coming up in nearby, not too far away. That buddy of mine told me about it and had an extra entry form, so I ended up signing up like a week out for the competition, which is like impossible nowadays, it seems like.
Yeah.
But like, I just ended up going, and I was a junior super heavyweight, ended up winning. It was the first time I've ever actually like tried to deadlift heavy with a straight bar, which is like kind of like my thing now. And I think I pulled like 644. I went 450, 550, 644 on deadlifts just because I had no idea what I was doing. I had like my like basketball shoes with like the air bubble in them. I didn't bring a singlet. I had no idea you needed one. I had to borrow one from some guy. It's like sequenced like bright red singlet thing. It was ridiculous looking. But that's after that first one I did, I was like, man, I've never liked playing sports. I've just always liked preparing for the sports because I got to lift weights. I got to get stronger all off season and then go in and do it. And then that doing that first meet changed my entire life. Like I was a business accounting major in college. I was still playing football and stuff. I did the meet, came back, took another accounting class, and was like, I don't want to. I went. Yet you couldn't do anything online yet in 2005, really. So I like walked to the registrar's office and changed it to like exercise science, and just really got into it. And that. After that first meet, the guy that got us like hooked up and signed us up for it, he was a big West Side guy, big conjugate guy, thank God, because like that was the best thing for somebody like me that's always been curious about this stuff and always enjoyed training and just, the bettering yourself through any kind of physical endeavor like that. I went on the West Side website and read every article that night, and then I got a subscription to Powerlifting USA and started just read through every page of that stuff that I could as those came out, and then that just sparked this whole thing that I've been unable to turn off basically ever since, for sure.
How were you training before that? So with just for football, pretty much? I mean...
Yeah, it was pretty... So in middle school, I remember how there was like a football interest meeting. In middle school, I was playing... My parents got me into sports. I was dyslexic. I had ADHD and literally every learning disability you could possibly think of. But like my mom, thank God, I still thank her to this day. She never wanted to put me on medicine because she didn't really trust stuff. The only thing available then was like Ritalin. So thank God, like really, I don't know, that stuff screwed a lot of people up. But so she got me into sports, wearing me out, running around. Like I just played sports all the time. But I was always kind of small. Like I was always kind of small, kind of weak, got pushed around, like bullied a lot and stuff like that. So I remember there was a football interest meeting in middle school where I went up to the coach afterwards and I was like, hey, coach, I really want to play, I want to play football in high school. Like, what do I need to do? And he looked at me and he's like, Jesus Christ, son, you got to start lifting weights and eating some food or you're going to get killed out there pretty much. Another thing I couldn't turn off since then. So I started lifting. Seriously probably when I was like 11 or 12 years old pretty much. And then kept it going. But that was really, like I said, but training from that point on was awesome because I lucked out with my football coach in high school. Was a super strength and conditioning oriented guy, like wanted everybody lifting to his idea of like an acceptable technique. He wouldn't let people fuck around and just do a bunch of dumb shit for no reason. Like you're on a program, you're going to do what's on the program. If you want to do extra stuff, like I don't want to see you doing it right now. Like you got to get this work done first. And then we actually had the guy Dr. Greg Shepard, the guy who started the BFS program. He actually came and talked to our school because we were I guess we might have been one of the first schools to really kind of implement the program. Like our coach went and got certified in it and stuff and came back. And that was really cool. But then reading about it later on, I had no idea Greg Shepard was like a big West Side guy too. Like he was really like, I mean, that's all we were like. The BFS program is literally just like a easier kind of easier implemented version of conjugate training if you just want to do kind of just a couple of main lifts and stuff because you're changing the set and rep schemes every week. Like you're changing it all the time. And then that was great. And I got super strong in high school because of that. And then went to college and it was a lot of like functional training stuff. So basically like the polar opposite kind of like you want to get stronger, but you don't want to get too strong. So when you get too strong, we got to back it off a little bit, which never made any sense to me. So like, I've had a dozen orthopedic surgeries at this point just because of injuries I think I sustained in a 4-year period of training bad. Like I really think so. And it's nothing against like the strength and conditioning staff or anything. It's just what kind of what we did. And I came in and basically just started blowing out all the records, all the lifting records from all this kind of BFS similar conjugate style stuff we were doing in high school. And then, I did not respond well to the functional training. Like, there's only so many times I can do a single leg step up with a bar on my back connected to like a band as fast as I can. That's going to help my squat get any better or anything. But that kind of turned me off to all that stuff pretty quick when I realized I was getting weaker doing it.
At what point did the weight room supersede the sports?
I loved playing football in high school. I've made friends that I'm still friends with now. I love playing football in college for the same reason. It's just the moment that competition started in 2005, I was still playing football. It was like my junior year or something like that. And that was just, I was like, I hate this. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. It was interesting. After that, I had like about a whole year to train, where I was just trying to get my squat, bench, and deadlift stronger before the next season started. So I had like a whole off season rather to kind of train and everything. And all my numbers got better. I broke all my own lifting records at the university and stuff. And we went through training camp. We had one scrimmage, and I had never manhandled other people that bad in my entire life. But at the end of our training camp, I was like, I just don't like doing this anymore. I'm wasting my fucking time. Like, I don't want to blow my knee out here in practice, like not caring about this at all, to not be able to do this other sport that I might actually be able to excel in and stuff. And that people have all kinds of idioms about quitting and stuff like that. There's never been a point in my life where I haven't quit something that hasn't worked out absolutely 100% better for me in the long run. And that quitting college football as a pretty good college football player was that was like the best decision I think I ever made.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that you weren't scholarshiped, right?
No.
So it's just a risk benefit. It's where when I went to college, I had the option, to play, and it was not scholarship. It's the same type of, and it's like the same thing went through my head that you're talking about is this is going to fuck my squat up. I'm not going to be able to train for the way I want to train for 3 or 4 months. And for what? I could fuck my knee up or whatever it was. And then and it was pretty easy, decision after, knowing that I already loved this other thing way better, 100%. So was it that deadlift from that first meet that hooked you then?
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure. I've had so many goddamn concussions. I can't keep this stuff straight, like dates and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure up until that point, that was the most that I had ever done. That was definitely the most I had ever done, but it didn't feel anything near like what I could do. Like it didn't. That 644, it could have been a power clean. It looked like. Yeah. So like, then I was like, oh man, I'm pretty like proficient at this. Like I want to learn how to do this a little bit better and everything. But and then we had our spring weights testing not too long after that. After I'd started kind of not training with our football strength conditioning program anymore, and just kind of trying to learn more about West Side and just what other people do, and finding other power lifters that were kind of similar build and following them and seeing what they were up to. But like, I remember I pulled 700 at our like weights testing, and like it's always a hype environment when a football weight. Remember when scream and jump around pretty much for no fucking reason.
Yeah, nobody's spotting, but everybody.
Everybody's there though. Everybody's there yelling at you. But I pulled the 700 and put it down. I looked around and everybody was looking at me like, Jesus Christ, dude. Yeah. Like there wasn't even like a hype thing anymore. People were like, what's your fucking problem, man? Like, and then just seeing the benefits of training purely for getting those 3 lifts better, like in such a short period of time. Just because I had all that base of all the football stuff, all the training I'd done before that, all the way back from middle school. I grew up on a farm too. We had all this like shit we had to do before school and everything. So it was just like all that was GPP leading up to training for that. I feel like I really think I started, especially learning more and knowing what I know now, like that was everything I did. That was like the perfect time to pick up a bar and really start trying to train for strength. It was after doing all of that stuff. And then, starting to specialize around that time when I was like 20, 21 years old, whatever it was. That just blew up. Like I got so strong so fast from that point.
That pivoted your education too. So it went from business into, you said exercise science, and then what did you graduate in? Was it exercise science? Or? Yeah.
I ended up, I graduated with that, did a couple of internships that were awesome. I got to do one internship with Dr. Mike Zordis. He was the guy that came up with like the daily undulating periodization stuff. Just super, super smart guy. And he was, oh my God. that guy was a nutcase. Watching him work out, he would do the craziest shit I think I've ever seen. But like, I ended up, so that led to coming back. Like, I left a really good impression with the strength staff there and everything. I got to come back as a grad assistant and do a master's in applied physiology. So that carried on to that and everything. I probably never would have gone back to school because I hated school. Like I said, all the learning issues that I had. It was funny. I had like bare minimum GPAs in high school to get to college and play football, bare minimum GPA to go to college and then get into the master's program. And then I graduated with like a 3.98 out of the master's program just because it was shit I was finally interested in.
Exactly. And my story is kind of the same where I grades sucked. And then finally it was like, holy shit, it wasn't even like school.
Yeah.
It's like, this is the whole time I'm thinking to myself, how can I use this for my own training? Like, fuck everything else. Like, how can I use it for that?
Totally.
And everything pivoted from there.
Yeah. Once you have that point, you can apply something to like that. So, I mean, if somebody got into business accounting because they were really interested in opening a business or something, I'm sure it would be the same thing. But like, once you have that like reference point to apply things to, it's like, holy shit, all this stuff makes sense all of a sudden, like in anything really, I guess.
Now, were there any times when you were in college where, I can distinctly remember one where a professor's teaching something and in your mind you're just thinking that's complete bullshit. And so that, I'm sure there's many instances of that. Were there any instances where you pushed back on them?
Yeah, because oh man. Okay. So there was like a discussion about creatine that had come up. And this wasn't a professor. This is somebody part of a training staff. Oh man, this might get me in trouble. So part of the training staff told us that creatine was a banned substance and it's going to show up on a drug test. And I was like, oh, are we all fucking vegetarians now or something? Like, because how are we going to monitor our meat intake to make sure that we don't have too much of it and stuff? And I just got shut down. Just like, no, that's not correct. Like, just going on to the next thing. Like, It was like a preseason thing. I was a little blown away by that because that guy had a doctorate in something too. So that was really interesting.
No, there was a bunch. The one that I had was in a programming class, whatever they called it at the time, and the whole day was about how long endurance training can help maximal strength. And at first I'm thinking, okay, blood flow, recovery, I 10 minutes here, there, just short. But no, man, it was just like fucking 5Ks and a marathon. And I'm just like, hey, no, this is bullshit. I couldn't. In the body, there was a bodybuilder that was in there with me. So there's a powerlifter, and the bodybuilder was like, I don't know if I'm buying this shit either. And it was just, to me, that was probably the bigger one. Cause after that, I learned not to do it again because it definitely impacted my grade. And where everybody's going to bring their own, professor wise, everybody's going to bring their own bias to the table. So he's an endurance athlete. So of course he's going to think that endurance training is going to be of high value of everybody else. And I'm saying shit like, if this was true, every meet that I would go to, there would be people out jogging in the fucking parking lot. That was always kind of my bullshit detector. Was, for a long time, you might remember this one because it comes and goes, where there's extreme value in unracking a weight over your 1 RM and just holding it. And you should do for that day, like you should do that. And then that day you're going to break a PR. And I'm like, okay, I get what you're saying. But if this were true, every fucking powerlifting warm-up, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Would have somebody doing this. And yet in all my years, I've never one time I've seen this actually happen ever. And it's just I'm trying to think of other ones. God, there's so many of them.
That's a great example right there. That's a really, really good one.
Oh, and there was one where, pulling your stomach in, like sucking your stomach, that's how you're going to squat bigger. I'm like, I don't know about this bullshit. I'm like, I remember saying, if this was true, again, I could go to any nationals anywhere and say, what are you doing? And you're going to say, I'm pulling. No, I would say, I want you to pull your stomach in when you go out for your opener as hard as you can. You'd be like, fuck off.
Well, even from an engineering standpoint with that one, you don't have these narrow buildings at the bottom.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And but there's value. I'm not going to say there's not value because people go back and forth, and it depends on the day. Let's put it that way. Is there a value in an exercise science degree? I'll just flat out ask you because you're closer to. When did you graduate? How long ago?
I got my undergrad in 2007, and then I got my master's in 2011. So a little bit ago. Okay, so still
a little bit ago. Would you say that if those people that are considering doing this, would you say that there's value in it?
To a point, for sure. Especially exercise science is such a generic term. I think it's like you need the first class you need to take in an exercise science program is someone that's an actual like whatever your goal is, whether you just want to be a personal trainer, you want to like the people that are smart already want to go on and be physical therapists or biologists or something, nurses or something like that. But like as far as the people that want to get into like sports performance, you need to have like day number one needs to be like a full-time strength and conditioning coach that comes in and tells you how fucking miserable that journey is, and then how like your undergrad degree doesn't mean anything. You need at least a master's degree, and then once you get done with that, you need at least 400 unpaid hours under your belt at least from a Division I school probably to get to do anything where you're making a comfortable living. Because a bunch of the people I went to school with, and and that was the whole point of me going to school. I was like, oh, strength and conditioning coach, like I love this stuff, that'd be awesome. And then I did like my internships, and I did like graduate assistant stuff. I'm like, I'm here for 16 hours a day, and like everybody here's starving to death because they're not making any money. And then I did make it kind of far into a process with American University where I was talking to the coach, and it's like, oh yeah, you'll be working with pretty much every team here. This is in the middle of Washington, D.C. You start out about $30,000 a year, and where do I live? Like even if I have 10 roommates, like I'm not, it's going to be $30,000 a year. I'm going to have $10 a year to spend on food from the sounds of it. But it's just that conversation was hilarious because he actually told me, there's gyms in the area where you can go personal train all day on Saturdays and Sundays, and you can actually make more money doing that than you're going to make here doing full-time strength and conditioning. I was like, why the fuck would I just move there and do that then? That sounds awesome.
No, that's one of the, that's still, up until a few years ago, that was kind of some of the sales pitch that the bigger schools would use for the assistants coming in. It wasn't so much, well, here's this because they already know the pay sucks. It's, well, here's these other gyms I can hook you up with, so you can have time after 5 to go train with your own clients because the client base will pay more, which throws the bigger question in here. When you go, is it worth it? Worth is determined based upon value and return on the investment. Now the cost of getting the degree is higher. So if the kid's going to graduate in debt, it's like how much in debt, and then what is the potential revenue moving forward from that, and it becomes a big question.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. Asking it like that, I would say absolutely not.
Yeah, you see, it's the crazy thing.
Yeah, but it's on the other hand, it's kind of interesting to think about. Like, you can learn 100% of what you're going to learn in a degree in exercise science in YouTube videos at this point now with the amount of information that's out there. But I know guys personally that didn't go to college, but like were into lifting, got like menial jobs and stuff, and they set up an Instagram page. They look good with their shirt off and stuff like that, and they're making money coaching. They're probably making more money than a professional strength and conditioning coach would be making just based off of social media referrals and stuff like that, just because they have like kind of a natural inclination for social media marketing and engagement and stuff like that. So that's a super interesting question and a really interesting conversation, because then the CSCS was like a paper test then that I had to go to that I had to go and take. Like, you couldn't even do that online. So it's just that's with that in consideration, I would say fuck no, absolutely not anymore.
Yeah, it changed because you can, like you said, you can learn, and even with that degree, it's still baseline. This basic baseline bullshit detector is what I say, because I go back. It depends upon the day. I go back and forth, right? Some days it's like, because it gives you a minimum level of that's bullshit. In an industry that's full of it, it does kind of help, but it's not going to pay well. And what you do need to be able to make the revenue isn't going to be taught in school. more that business, side or marketing side. And then that becomes fucked, in the industry too. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Why did you decide the raw and drug-free? I get the raw because when you came in, multiply it was around, but I don't ever like to say multiply is dead, right? Because it just didn't grow. If you go through open powerlifting, and I've told people this many times, and look at how many total there were, say 30 years ago, multiply, it's about the same now. It just didn't grow. It's still the same. It was like the same 3,000 people being pulled into IPA, APF, and then SPF. It's just crazy. Where raw grew substantially, so and as a percentage of powerlifting, it's way, 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 way less than it was. Where before it might have been, it still wasn't that big, 20%, 30% maybe. There might have been 20,000 total powerlifters 20 some years ago. Now it's 200,000-300,000 before you even count people that don't compete. But why stay drug free?
That's a good question that I don't have a great answer to. Honestly, it's just I don't think there's I've got a lot of differing opinions, and a lot of people that I train with, especially competing in the IPF and everything. Like when I see people that are competing and like juiced to the gills and like lifting big weights and stuff, I just think they're fucking taking it more seriously, honestly, than people that don't ever take that step. I just I don't know. I don't. It's not like a sanctity of sport thing or a level playing field thing. It's just it's just a decision that I made, and I honestly don't have a great validation for it. I just, when people talk about this stuff, it's like such a moral ivory tower thing too. Like, I want to see what I can do naturally and stuff. Well, like, what you're doing isn't fucking natural. Like, you're going to the gym and you're doing, like, if you want to know how, if this was like, if drug-free competition was a test of natural strength, you wouldn't even fucking train for it. You just go and see how much you can lift. You're training. That's making you do more than you can do naturally through the stimulus of training and adapting to it over time. So that argument's complete bullshit right there. Like, totally. Like, cancel your fucking gym membership and just go do a meet every weekend. We'll see what you can do. But that's a really good question. Like I said, that I really don't have a great answer to, just because it's something, I'm 37 years old now. By the time I hit 40, this might be a totally fucking different conversation. Yeah. But I'm glad I've been, I don't know. It's cool to see that comparable. Obviously, everybody at the top of anything isn't doing everything that they're supposed to do, but there are people that get there. Like, I've made a lot of friends in the IPF, and I went to IPF Worlds in 2013, actually won a gold medal in the deadlift, which was an awesome experience. It's funny, the guy that almost beat me was the current deadlift world record holder from, Algeria, I think. And a couple years later, he got busted in a drug test out of nowhere. Like, they just tested him at just the right time, I guess. Like, I think it was an out-of-meat test, which the newer isotope tests are getting everybody. I don't give a shit what anybody says right now. Like, no one's getting away with shit right now, with the blood tests and everything else that are going on at the highest level there. But I saw that guy got busted, and I was like, fuck yeah. Like, fuck that guy. I don't know. But again, there's no, like, moral choice to it or whatever. Just something that I just personally chose. Like, I just want to see what I can get done like this as long as I can. And like I said, I'm 37 years old, but I feel better now than I have in the last like 10 years competing. And I'm finally getting back into something where I can like get to bigger and bigger meets again, just from, which probably would have happened a lot sooner if I was on drugs. Now that I think about it, for sure, which makes it sound even more appealing. But like I said, ask me again in a few years. This might be a totally different conversation.
Well, I'm sure you've trained around enhanced people the whole time that you've been training, right?
Sure.
So one of the theories that I've always had, just from observation of my own population I've been around in over the years, was the difference between enhanced and drug-free training was the opposite, in my opinion, of what everybody thinks, right? Because they all think that the enhanced guy can do more work. And I found that opposite to be true, that they actually have to do less. And I don't know if it's because the muscular contraction could be harder, they wear out faster. I don't know what it is, but it's in the drug-free have to do more or can do more. It's weird, like the total volume, not workload, so just sets and reps, the volume. Seems like it always had to be higher, for the drug-free than the enhanced. And if the enhanced tried to do what the drug-free were doing, if they're same strength and they both tried the same program, the enhanced guy would go backwards.
Yeah, that's honestly, that's been my experience too. Cause like you get, and it's taken it like a little bit different direction here, but kind of the same thing. It's interesting that like all kind of the original periodization, like linear periodization planning and stuff like that was all developed by kind of bodybuilders in the 70s and 80s that were all juiced to the gills pretty much. And everybody just kind of accepted that as like the best way to do everything for everybody. There doesn't seem like there's any way for someone to survive that long, just doing like your 3 sets of 10 on week 1 and like 3 sets of 8 on week 2, and then like kind of putting it down like that. It seems like the only way you can maintain that kind of maintain any kind of gains from that kind of training is if you're kind of on something that like helps you kind of maintain that stuff. But it's it's funny. That's a really similar experience to what I've seen, because I think that's part of like kind of there's like a whole trend of this really high frequency like nonsense training that people do. That like just like you said, it's really popular on like Instagram. People doing all these like small law squat cycles and stuff like that. Where they're like, oh dude, I've been on it for 2 weeks. I feel like I'm fucking dying. This is awesome. This is going great. Like I feel horrible. Like I can't do anything but go to the gym and squat anymore. It's great. My life's awesome. But like, like you said, then you look at what like really good prolific lifters are doing that are obviously on stuff, and it's like it's the polar opposite. It's like the least. I don't know if like I said, I consider that people just kind of taking the training a little bit more seriously. So maybe people are just a little bit more aware at like the minimal effective dose of stuff, but there's got to be some kind of physiological thing, like you're saying.
There has to. I've never, tried to dig deep enough to really give a fuck as to why, right? But I was just wondering. I like to ask other people that are around both of those worlds if that's the same thing, and it always seems to be. And it's the fuck if I know. All I know is that if somebody's used to the gills, they more than likely need to do less, but do the right stuff. If somebody is clean, they just need to start by adding a little bit more volume. And it's weird as long as it's all periodized and phasic and all that. So we'll wind back a little bit, because you've done a lot of different programming over the years, right? So you have done the high frequency, you've done the daily undulating periodization, you've done west side conjugate type approach, and now you probably have your own hybrid, type of approach. Where I guess before moving forward, I'm trying to think of the ones people probably may not know that well. Brief summary of what daily undulating periodization is for the people that are listening.
Yeah, so I did one of my internships with Dr. Mike Zordas. He's a big proponent of that. I think he's down at Florida Atlantic University now. He's got his own like exercise science lab and does a bunch of really cool research on not only training, but like immunology and like immune system impacts of training, which is really, it's literally all that matters when you consider recovery aspects of this stuff. But it's really interesting stuff. But he, so he was kind of the pioneer of the daily undulating periodization and bringing that up. So I worked with him for a little bit, doing some of that. I think only about a year. I honestly, the training's fine. I couldn't fucking hang. The frequency, it was too much. The work was too much, and I got beat into the ground, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. I did get a little stronger in the short term, and that I chose to do that as a break, just a little break from conjugate training and stuff, just to see what else was out there, and that's it. And I love Mike to death, but that experience reinforced my belief that that's West Side's methods and principles is the best system out there, hands down. Just especially all the injuries and stuff I've had, but we can talk about that a little more later. But so daily undulating periodization, it's a higher frequency program. You have two different versions of it. You have a weekly undulating periodization and daily undulating periodization. So the daily undulating periodization is you have your each day is dedicated to either a strength quality, a hypertrophy quality, or a power quality. So you're basically doing all 3 lifts each day. You might deadlift with a little less frequency, obviously, because that'd be fucking terrible to do it that much. I think I got it to like twice a week and somehow handled it well for a little while, especially the amount of weight that I could move on deadlifts. That was very surprising. But you just basically, so like day 1 might be like you're doing your squat power workout, you have your deadlift hypertrophy workout, and then your bench strength workout, and then you just rotate those ad nauseum forever. And the plan is to periodize each one of those individually over time, and then hopefully as a meet gets closer, you just make them a little bit more intense, drop the volume, take a week off, and then go to the meet and see how it goes. That's a really bastardized, simple version of it, but that's about it. But it's really interesting looking at those qualities where it's, you're working strength, power, and hypertrophy. I mean, that's, max effort, repeated effort, and dynamic effort too, just done in like kind of a tighter density, I guess, than having it be spread out, which is really interesting comparing those two after doing, I think I had been doing like conjugate style training, West Side stuff for, probably 10 years before I jumped into that just to see what it was like. But just seeing that and being able to compare those two things, it seemed like polar opposite programs and stuff, polar opposite methodologies, I guess. And there's a lot of similarities to a lot of the stuff. I think just the way it's kind of implemented gets a little fucked up with people. But that's the gist of it. That's really it.
The important thing, I think, is there's the similarities because you can find, some type of max effort 90% up, so in all programs, right? So some programs it may be the I'm trying to think of block the peaking phase isn't called the peaking phase, not the transition phase. Help me out.
Like Circa Max, like
no, just in regular block, because you have the accumulation phase, which is basically like the repetition work, right? And then you have the
intensification,
which is the the max effort type stuff, and then outside. So all programs incorporate the same intensity zones. If we just break it down that way, the repetition method is 60 to 75 ish, somewhere in there, and then dynamic is in there and max efforts in there. They all just get laid out differently. So DUP, it's all laid out in the day, or over a week. Right. Conjugate is weighed out over a week, but then phased, in 3 week ways.
Yeah, it's a lot. The cycles, the way you cycle the training is a little bit different because, even just like you said, even on your strength, if you're focused for, whatever the lift is, a strength or power, like those percentages and the weights that you're working with are still going to be at a lower intensity, higher volume further out. And then as you get closer to the meet, they increase over time and stuff like that. So it's all
linear.
It's all the same.
Well, that's the other thing too. It's like all periodization still linear when you get back further, far enough to be able to see what it all is. It's just, it seems to be easier to discuss it, from like, here's a block model, here's a conjugate model, here's a linear model. But yet they're all conjugate, they're all linear, they're all they're all blocked. It's kind of all fit in there. With the higher frequency work, what did you try with that, and how did that pan out?
That was just exclusively with the, I mean, what I do now, or what I've always done with kind of all the West Side everything putting into it, like I consider that kind of a higher frequency somewhat, because if you're really like, people undervalue the importance of, the assistance work, number one, just like what you were talking about before, just the amount of assistance work I have to do now at 37 to like move well and feel good when I'm doing my heavy stuff is probably like quadruple what I had to do when I was like 20 years old, which is kind of funny to think about. But the extra work, especially like coming in and hitting a couple exercises really, really hard for a bunch of reps and then just getting the hell out of the gym and stuff, I think that stuff is totally undervalued by, really anybody that does any program. Like I really think to maximize this stuff, it can't just be like a 4-day-a-week thing or a 3-day-a-week thing where you're just going and doing the main list and everything. So but I get what you're asking me, like if higher frequency of doing like heavy ass squat benches and deadlifts like multiple times throughout the week. Yeah, that was exclusively with that DUP stuff that I was doing. That was the only time I really pushed that kind of stuff. I just couldn't hang. Like I said, I probably got into it for about like 3 or 4 months where I was feeling like pretty good. And then for the remaining like 8 months that I was doing it, it felt fucking terrible. Yeah. But it's really interesting. There's a lot of research on people that do like those squat every day programs, or people try to do like a daily max squat and stuff. And it's really, really interesting. Most people tap out at that around like 40, 45 days, where you can actually like draw a line with progress. You can see like consistent weight going up over time and everything. And there might be like little dips, little spikes here and there, but basically, you have a pretty you're a pretty solid progression, and you can play. It's predictable at that point, at least 40, 45 days. And then as soon as you hit day 50, that shit just starts looks like AFib on a monitor or something. But it's that's literally right about where I tapped out, where it was just like, I can't, this shit is going crazy. But I tried to stick with it just to see, and then I ended up being stupid and getting a stupid injury, overuse stuff, nothing major. I didn't do any more surgeries or anything, but I was just beat up all the time. I was like, I can't do this anymore. But I don't know how people are proponents of high frequency training forever. I just don't see it. It just does not seem sustainable. Like the whole training efficiency is doing the least amount of work, spending the least amount of time, and putting the least amount of effort into something and still seeing some kind of desirable result. So you want training to be the slowest possible progress imaginable, to do it as long as you possibly can. And then I always make this comparison that I read this somewhere on the internet, so this wasn't my original idea, but all these high frequency squat programs and stuff like that are to powerlifting and strength sports what crash dieting and bulimia is to bikini competitions and stuff. It's the same concept.
What I'm getting here is you have the education and you have the experience. I mean, decades of both, right? And you've done all these multiple different variants of programming, and didn't just do them, but did them with a working knowledge of curiosity of what the fuck is this? How do you lay it out? How can I lay it out best? It's many people can relate to what we're talking about. As you're looking at the DUP or whatever it is, you're not just saying, oh, fuck it, I'm going to print this off and do it. You're taking a day and whiteboarding shit and trying to figure it all out and lay it all out. And now many, years later, with that experience, education, and all that behind you, whatever you're doing now is the accumulation of the best, the worst, what you've discovered works for you, and as well as people that you help from there. What are those bullet points?
Yeah, that's a really awesome, articulate way to put it too. Because I was just having this conversation with a guy that I train with the other day. I'm still such a believer in West Side and everything. I still have my max effort days, still have my dynamic effort days. I really think the keys now that I wasn't really prioritizing back then, like I mentioned before, really hammering the assistance work, really being able to evaluate yourself and be honest with yourself where your weaknesses are. I could break down everything I suck at right now and then tell you exactly what I'm doing to work on those things. That's the most important part of my workout, not even necessarily whatever my variation for max effort work is that day. I figure that out basically when I get there. And
how do you determine what you suck at?
It's just it's so, that's a great question, because that changes over time for everybody. I think as soon as you identify something that might be, I know for me right now, and this has never been a problem for me, so I've been kind of obsessing about it a little bit, is I've noticed my bracing has sucked lately. For some reason my bracing has been terrible, but also I'm pretty sure my lower back has never been stronger than it is now, which is weird because I've actually broken my L3 twice, and I have scoliosis, and my discs are all in weird fucking directions all over the place. But I've never had, other than when I broke my back, obviously, I never had back pain anymore. But I've been hammering lower back exercises. So I don't know if I've accidentally initiated some inhibitory mechanism somewhere that makes it harder for me to brace under a heavy squat or doing heavy deadlifts and stuff. So a lot of my deadlift variations, I have been vehemently against rack pulls forever, just because I hate them. I just don't like fucking doing them. They're uncomfortable. I never saw any value in them until I had a problem with bracing, and then it's holy shit, this is just a bracing exercise to get into a good position. So that's one example right there. So it just kind of, I don't know if there's a great system that exists. I don't know if there's any good quantifiable metrics you can put to it or anything, other than just really paying attention to what you're doing. And I think that's a fucking skill that a lot of people don't have.
No, it is. And it's some people will use bar path, some people will use bar speed, other people are going to use where they don't feel tight, kind of would be a little bit what you're talking about there. It just doesn't feel right. Or where they miss, there's all these little check boxes people are trying to use. But as you just said, I misquoted that. I said most people don't even have check boxes. They just do their shit, and then it just continues to get worse and worse and worse and worse. Where I think that, with everybody, they should just start to learn how to establish some of these check boxes. Because now we deal with technique, right? Technique's going to be different for people too. So, does your technique look like it's the best it should be? If it doesn't, why? And look that way. Is it just technical, or is it physical breaking down? I like what you said about the bracing thing, because I wouldn't been able to articulate that otherwise. Does everything feel tight? Because you're trying to get some people to get their lats tight, say when they squat, and they don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because they haven't learned how to feel it yet. So do they just falsely assume that's never a weak point? Or you see what I'm saying? So,
well, that's a whole other interesting thing too. Kind of a trendy thing now is like you see all these people squatting like with that's a perfect example. You see all these people squatting with like super low bar positions, hands in super close, everything packed in. And then how many videos have you seen recently of some poor bastard like snapping their forearm in half, like re-racking a squat? Like it's like stuff. Like people try to find ways to get around that stuff by creating with that example, you have this like fake passive tension you can create where you tell somebody like that, hey, you got to flex your lats more. Like I'm tight. Like this feels tight, but like you're not really tight. You're just at this like physiological end range where you physically can't stretch or create tension in any direction. But it's you're still like loading, which is an issue. Like that's not good. But like something like that, like somebody's not getting their lats tight in that situation, they can get their hands wider, get the bar a little bit higher, and then all of a sudden I need to have a strong back to squat now, and I don't, and that's why everything hurts all the time. That's interesting. The
other caveat I put that there because it's what you noted was what's currently going around. There's always some current thing going around. Like this is weak for everybody.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if it's still going around now. The one arm cable row was like the shit. Like the exercise everybody never did, but now has to do because it's the greatest thing in the world. That was the thing going around. And not that any of these are good nor bad. They just trend. The way it is. So I've always said whatever's trending as being the current weak point, it's probably not your weak point.
It's like the people bringing their own deadlift rugs into the gym and stuff now. Have you seen?
I haven't seen that one.
Jesus Christ!
What the hell is that about?
It's like it's a sumo thing. People have it's just look at people's feet when you're looking through Instagram later, looking at like lifting videos and stuff. I guarantee you half of them, somebody will have their own rug that they brought to the gym that they put down to keep their feet from sliding, because all of a sudden now that's like an issue or something with deadlifts, because it's like this is something I've just noticed in the last like month and a half here. But it's
why the fuck? I mean, I've always had rugs, and I mean, you always want that in a meet, right? You always want that for the squats. I always squatted wide, but first off, how did it not ever be that platforms didn't have that? And if, you know what I'm saying? So there's the first one, because you'd think after decades, they kind of figured that out, that they're going to have a grippy rug, unless they're going wider now than what they did before, which, did the bars change?
I'm sure the bars are like some of the deadlift bars now are like, there's like elephant bar kind of stuff in between and everything. That's ridiculous.
Well, when we used to sell the Texas deadlift bar, that inside hub, whatever you want to call it, was I don't know, 4 inches, something like that. And then I remember Rogue came out with their deadlift bar, and it was only like that, that big, right? And you're like, now wait a minute, if you pull sumo, this sucks, because the plates are going to get, where I don't know if that hub has gotten wider, which will make a big difference too, because then you can get out even further.
Yeah.
But that can just parlay right into one of the things that I have there is, what is your opinion on, those sumo pulls and the benches? We'll go with the benches first, because that falls down your alley with IPF.
Yeah, I don't know how this started, but any time there's like an big arch bench video on the internet, I end up getting tagged in it. I swear there's people that follow me just because they like seeing me getting into days long arguments with people on the internet, and I need to cut this shit out. But like it can't be good for me. But like, so the way, like, let's look at another sport real quick. So like sprinting, 100-meter sprinter. So you have this somebody running to try to run the fastest 100 meters they possibly can. Would you ever tell that person to try to get their legs parallel and straight and parallel to the ground while they're running? So you have like one leg straight out in front, one leg straight back. That's not, no one would ever tell a sprinter to ever do that, but that's, you know, they're going to get beat by somebody with a faster foot cadence every single time. They're going to be too upright. Their acceleration angle is going to be terrible, but that's also the biggest range of motion that they can do for that event. Like that's the biggest range of motion they can put their legs through. So, but they're going to lose every single time. So like another example closer to this, let's take squatting. Like, would you ever tell anyone to squat with their heels touching and then to come down so far that the bar hits their thighs and they're like staring at their ass in the bottom of it? You know what I mean? Like, no, that would count, and that's well within the rules, and that's the biggest range of motion you can possibly take in a squat. So these are just questions of movement economy. Like, you wouldn't tell people to move more than they need to for no reason whatsoever. So that's just kind of the basis that I take this at. So you look at somebody doing like a huge arch on a bench press, and it's a dozen people in the world that do this.
Yeah.
There's no more than 12 people on Earth that are taking advantage of this. And it's not even taking advantage. These people are athletes. They have better mobility, better flexibility, and everything. I don't understand the outpouring of just people being just totally buttered over these things. And it's almost exclusively like a lightweight teenage lifter that's maybe doing a double body weight bench press. So you got the Swedish guy, Eddie Berglund or whatever, the IPF World Champion, who does something astronomical. I forget what it was. But, and like another guy, Sean Noriega is a good one. I think he's like 200 pounds and benches over 5 something, but the bar's moving that far. That is awesome to me, because you've got somebody that's taken movement economy into effect. So powerlifting, and this is the whole basis of my argument with this, powerlifting is literally the sport of who can move the most weight the shortest distance and have it still count. That's it. That's the whole entire basis of the sport. So now the IPF is doing a rule change because all these fucking people that don't even compete on the internet have complained so much.
They are doing it?
It seems like it. So it's going to be some weird flat back thing. Now you've like, what are you going to do? Penalize heavyweight lifters for being bigger than everybody else? Like, what if, I got long forearms, nothing's ever going to be a problem for me, but like people with shorter arms, that's going to be a problem. Like whatever, like it's some rule about having the back flat. I don't know if they've written the whole thing out yet, but your spine isn't straight.
Yeah.
Like your back isn't straight. Like it has
so they're going to look for daylight under your lower back?
Something. I have no idea. I don't know what the specifics are. I haven't seen it. I haven't really looked into it. I've been, the last like 5 meets I've done have been in the USPA and stuff. So I've just kind of been just doing that because it's been fun and close by. But I don't know. I have no clue what the actual rule is going to be. But it's I don't know. It's wild to me that it's just, and there's no rational or logical argument against it outside of people don't like the way it looks. Like,
well, that would be. I mean, it's where I would come into that, because I don't even give a fuck enough to debate it. I just like to post it because it gets tons of fucking views and it helps my reels, But I'll just post it out there because as long as it's in the rules, so be it. Keep in mind, I come from the multiply world, where it is, if, wherever it passes, where it passes, we're not getting extra pounds to squat deeper. Now, has it gotten fucked up, and higher and higher? We can have that conversation, 100%, but that's still, that whole conversation doesn't fall back on the lifter. I've never been a fan of this. If you have a bunch of people trying to look over the fence, you don't lower the fence. You teach the people that can't look over how to get up higher, or help them, stand on books or whatever it's supposed to be. And whatever it is, where my first question would have been, if I gave a fuck, is how many people is this? What population are we talking about? So out of the IPF world, 10 lifters out of what, thousands? So is it even a significant percentage of people?
Well, even when you get to that level, it's still like 2 people.
You see what I'm saying? So now you're dealing with, in statistics, what's called a very, very minimal. I mean, I don't even know what it's called in statistics when it's that fucking low. Insignificant, that's for damn sure.
Yeah.
Not even a standard deviation, right? It can't be. So then is it a problem? So that would be the first thing.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is, how long they've been doing it? Because I'm pretty sure we can go back if we really cared and find the same shit happening 20 years ago. And now it's only a problem because somebody posted it on Instagram.
That's exactly what it is. Shit drives me. Like I said, I just gotta start like blocking the people that tag me in the shit, because they just, I don't know, people like seeing me get riled up about it.
What made me laugh when I first saw it was, and I think it's what I wrote on the post that I made, is, no, wait a minute, I thought multiply was bad. You know what I'm saying? Because people would bitch because with the multiply, like, oh, you're not lifting the weight, the gear's lifting the weight. And I'm like, okay, so now raw is more bashed, you know, more hated. Now the raw has more haters than the multiply. Like, this is so upside down and backwards that the world actually is fucking nuts. You know, because it's happening with that, and it's happening with the sumo. You know, and not so much in the IPF, because the same bar is still used for all three lifts, right?
Yeah.
How the fuck do you qualify for the IPF Worlds now if you're in the States?
I'm not sure. Well, there's a new this is helpful. There's a new powerlifting federation, Powerlifting America, which is actually run by a pretty good dude. I've known him for a couple of years now. So they have a couple of meets. That is the new American IPF affiliate, but I don't think they have meets outside of like Florida. I think there's like one in New York now. It's still like really, really small. I mean, they haven't, I don't even know, maybe like 2 years they've existed, and it's
so there is a way without going to like St. Thomas.
Yeah. You don't have to go to like Montreal or anything.
That's what I was wondering, because there's still a lot of IPF lifters that are here in the States. You know, you can't just like up and just say, fuck you can't lift.
Yeah, like I said, I think they do. I think there's like some meets in New Mexico and stuff that they do. So it's mainly like East Coast, and I'm sure there's plans to expand even further now. But I think they just did in June or July their second nationals as like a federation. So there's still a way to do it. But yeah, it's definitely not USAPL anymore. USAPL, I think they're changing their weight classes back and everything.
Again?
Back to like 275 or whatever. Like they had the weightlifting, like 264 and stuff. I think they're switching it back from last thing I saw.
I can't remember how long ago, but it was, because I was reminded of it when I had Eddie Cohn out, because I was looking at his best lifts over the years, you know, and I think on open powerlifting, there's 2 198 classes. There's like a 198 above 198. It's fucked up if you look at it. And I'm like, well, why the fuck? And then it's like, oh shit, that's when they changed the weight classes. Remember? Because it was they wanted to reset the world records, because the prior world records supposedly were all done on drugs. So all the new world records are supposedly going to all be done without drugs. So they basically reset all the world records.
Yeah.
So they're looking at doing that again?
Something like that. Yeah, I don't know. Well, with the USAPL, I don't know if the plan is to have their own international affiliate now or link up with somebody else. So again, that's in, like I said, I've been following too much of that stuff the last couple of years.
No, it is.
I'll just wait till they straighten it out and then figure it out from there.
They won't.
Yeah, right.
It's fucking never will. You know, that's the thing with this is, you know, I've been in the sport since 82. You know, and I didn't know enough to even give a fuck about any of this type of shit back then, right? But I do remember the USPF, you know, breaking, and then ADFPA, and then I believe APF. You know, so this shit has been happening to some degree since like the late 80s, you know, mid 80s. And people are like thinking it's going to change. It's like, no, it's not going to change. You know, there's certain certainties in the sport of powerlifting is, you know, the federation issue is never going to change. It's never going to get in the Olympics. Just assume the shit ain't ever going to happen. You know, whoever competes in whatever federation, no matter what the weight class, every single lifter thinks their dick is bigger than somebody else's. It's just that these are all common facts.
Oh, yeah.
That if people just assumed that, then it'd be so much easier. Because like most of the bullshit, you know, that you see is over things that have been the same way for 20 years.
Yeah, for sure. I just can't wait to start my underground rack pull league. That's my goal. Start my own federation.
Oh, I've talked about having a lumber lifting federation where it would be a box squat with a yoke bar, board presses, and then pulling with the plates off boxes.
Awesome.
that way I can do all of it.
I'm in whenever that starts.
I mean, you wear fucking flannel shirts and briefs only, but the briefs need to be inspected. Because you know what's going to happen there. They're going to get all fucked up and put straps. And
oh yeah, for sure.
I'm seeing it. It's so funny because you're seeing the iteration happen. You're seeing raw turned into gear. Very, very slowly over a period of time, where the knee sleeves went from just shitty ass sleeves to whatever the Inzer ones are now.
They're ridiculous.
Which is like, that's sleeve. That's like stronger than the wraps from 30 years ago.
I've got 2 pairs of those because I couldn't get the first pair on, and I'm got a pretty good pain tolerance. I think too. I couldn't get these fucking things on to save my life, but they are about as heavy as this bottle of water here. Like it's crazy. Just the thickness of the material. I can't believe that still counts. Yeah.
What do you feel different about those compared to any of the even the 9mm? Well, they're still legal, but I'm talking any previous.
Well, any of the neoprene sleeves, I've always felt the same about them. I mean, neoprene as a material, it doesn't store elastic energy, and it doesn't really impede movement or anything. Like if it did, everybody that's ever worn a wetsuit would be dead.
Yeah,
you know
what
I mean? They'd all be drowning. They'd be floating around in the ocean right now. But so there's not. I don't think all the performance enhancement aspect of it is all like proprioceptive. Like it helps your body awareness in space. You can feel your knees a little bit better and stuff, which is great. But they don't do a whole lot. Actually, I won a stupid little Instagram contest from one company and got a pair of their 2X double ply knee sleeves. So they have straps on the top of them so you can pull them up and stuff. Those fucking help. Those give.
But that's more like knee wrap material, though, right?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah,
so that would be
like
different.
50-50.
Yeah,
it's like a loose wrap on, and they're awesome. Especially the knee problems that I've had. I love wearing those things. They are awesome. But even the new Inzer ones. I mean, like the time I did actually get the bigger ones on and could squat in them and stuff, the seam from them was cutting the back of my leg so fucking bad I didn't even want to wear them anymore. But it seems like people are using them and moving more weight with them. So I don't know if this is like kind of the first iteration of like an actual technological advancement in the way they process the neoprene and stuff to make it so that it like helps. But it seems like I know I remember the first pair of the longer SBD sleeves that I got back in the day. They had a guy like walking around Worlds of 2013, just like handing them out to people to like try them out and stuff. The first pair that I got are about twice as thick as the ones they make now, and I'm pretty sure they sell them at the same price too. But it's like about half the material. So those are even those. I never felt like a pop. I never felt like anything out of the bottom that really helped. But it's still, I don't know. They get thicker and tighter and stuff. And but those Inzer ones are the first ones that seem like they're like legit adding pounds to the bar for people for like,
where that will be, we'll just progress from which is just the nature of gear and how it's kind of always been that way anyhow, which
getting
is
there.
Which it seems to be, to where the singlets will start to get a little thicker. Just give it time. Actually, one of them I did see was almost like a single ply suit I used way back in the day. Like, whoa, shit, this is, we see where this is going here. And, but people will bitch, all the way through. But as long as, like you said earlier, as long as it's within the rules, it is what it is.
Man, it's so funny you say that. I swear the singlets they gave us to be for the world team in 2013 are a half a ply thick. They've got to be. I've never, like, you can hold a compression singlet in one hand and this one in the other one, and you can close your eyes and tell which one you're holding for sure. Yeah, that'll probably get me in trouble too.
Well, I mean, it's just fact though. I mean, I felt the same thing, and I'm not going to sit here and say that's going to add 25, 30 pounds. Who the fuck knows, right? But it's the start, because then you can start making it, you buy the extra small and then you start using that. Then all of a sudden the ass is going to start blowing out. And it's the same thing that, here we go, it's all coming up through, or people will just migrate into single ply. Who knows what it's going to be. With you being pretty much jokingly, the only raw, drug-free, conjugate type guy, because it doesn't work for raw lifters, right? what are some of the things that you've used with your conjugate system to be able to overcome those obstacles that would come with that? For instance, it only works for geared lifters, and I know all the arguments from that, but some of them do though. Some of them do have to be mitigated. Box squats, for instance, have to be mitigated to be able to have any type of carryover. Mm-hmm. So what are the things that you've had to tweak, adjust, and change?
I know the biggest thing, hands down, is just an understanding of where the methodologies and the principles came from, and just like in those original like West Side articles that Louis wrote, there was a million book recommendations, all the books to sell on the website and stuff like that. I mean, I bought all of them at one point or another, and actually like read them and tried to like understand what we're talking about, minus super training, which might as well be written in French or something like that. That was the hardest book I've ever read in my life. I made it about a quarter through that like 5 times, I think.
No, the hack for that is you got to read the last part first.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. Yeah, so like it just having an understanding of where it kind of came from kind of lets you be a little more flexible with it, I think. And not a lot of people take the time. Like people, especially nowadays, there used to be a lot more people that were proponents of getting people to actually get into different resources, like go read this book, go read this thing, go. But then I think social media has been kind of a blessing and a curse for stuff like this. It's more like, oh, don't worry, I already have an understanding of this stuff. Just buy my program, buy my coaching, and you won't have to waste the time to do that stuff. And I think that's anybody that's interested in doing this for the long haul, or even interested in it at all, needs to get some, buy some of these fucking textbooks and look through them and stuff for sure. So I don't know if there's any like specific key or anything. I've seen the ways people have like bastardized it, because I mean I've seen just different resources where it's like oh, you don't need speed day as like a raw lifter, so just replace it with like 5x5 like hypertrophy work, something like that. That's a total misunderstanding of the entire system, I think, because the volume on your dynamic effort day is how you progress the entire system over time. So like being able to progress that volume, like quantifiably. You can't do that on your max effort day. You're doing 2 or 3 sets of 1 and then stopping and then going to your assistance work. That's not enough volume to do anything, let alone outside of like straining a little bit, working with how your technique is under heavy loads and stuff like that. So you have to have that volume on dynamic effort day to consistently progress. And I'm a fucking psychopath. I literally write down, even when I used to do a ton of online coaching and stuff, and then I just kind of got away from it just because of stuff like this mostly. Like I actually make a yearly plan for everybody, including myself, where it's not anything I'm sticking to 100%, but I could look at it and tell you like what week of the year I'm going to be in what phase of training based on how many competitions that I'm doing. And even that kind of organization is like lost on people nowadays. So being able to plan that stuff out. So again, I don't know if it's any like one weird trick to make it work or anything like that, but it's just having an understanding of how it should be set up and the reason you're doing these things. Like that thing with the dynamic effort work's huge, because I see so many like raw West Side templates that cut that out completely. And it's like, well, what are you doing? Like you're gonna do 5 sets of 5 there instead. Sure, that's the same amount of volume, but you're not moving it as fast. Like that's kind of important too. Like that's, you want to be able to progress that volume over time for sure. That's like a major thing. But, and then it seems like a lot of times too, exactly what you were saying before, sometimes like raw drug-free lifters need to be doing more volume with stuff, and they're trying to like do some bastardized version of just like do a max effort lift and leave. Yeah. And then, just, skip everything else. Or like the dynamic effort stuff takes them 2.5 hours to get through for some reason. So they just do that and like do the sit up machine and then leave or something. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I don't know. I think the two biggest things are just like understanding the program and then doing enough work outside of the main lifts to be in a good enough condition to progress that over time, for sure, if that makes any sense. Yeah, if that makes any sense at all.
Well, the speed work thing's always been, or dynamic day, whatever you want to call it, it's always been the interesting one to me, because that's the one that usually gets the second pushback. The first pushback's the box. So that's always the first one. The second one's the dynamic work, and it's always it's always like intrigued me because it's, I'll just come out and say, okay, let's just not call it dynamic work. Let's just call it technical training. You're going to do 8 sets of 2, because after the second, my belief is after the second rep, mentally you're not going to be as sharp. So you could do a set of 5, 3 of them reinforces bad technique. The first 2 reinforce good technique. So 5 sets of 5, you got 10 reps reinforcing good technique. 8 sets of 2, you got 16. So you got more technical reps done in 1 week than you do in the other, usually at a lighter percentage, which is going to allow you to make the technical adjustments if you do feel that it's a little off. So let's just say the dynamic component doesn't do shit. Well, there's the technical component, and you are a powerlifter, right? So learning the movement is kind of like learning how to kick a goal for, a soccer player. You kind of have to do it. So you only think, 1 set of 3, is good, for technical reinforcement. So there's that, then the conditioning. There's a conditioning component of doing the 8 sets of 2. Anybody that's done it at a minute, even 2 minutes rest, just got that in there. The compensatory acceleration, standing, trying to stand with force, intent. Most beginners don't fucking know. So if dynamic work just physically doesn't work, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. There's those. Then there's the things that you're talking about is the phasic structure of the load, the workload that's associated, and it's higher. It's way higher. You take the 8 sets of 2, 10 sets of 2 for whatever you're using, 400, calculate that out. Your workload may be twice as high versus somebody else's, where over a period of time, the higher workload is going to, accumulate. Oh, yeah. And add up. So there's so many reasons why, you see what I'm saying? There's so many reasons why it can be implemented outside of the argument, because they can't say technique doesn't matter, right? Yeah. It's like, well, actually, some do, like strength coaches will, and I can almost buy it, because their football players are not competing in a squat. But that's kind of fucking lazy if you're not going to try to make it at least safer. Yeah, yeah. Than a bastardized good morning squat mess.
There's no technique when you're making a tackle out there.
Yeah, I know. It's just like that kind of dumb shit. But it happens tremendously. When you say building up the higher volume, I assume that you're talking with your accessory work. And then how would you do that?
Yeah, that's another thing that's kind of changed. I used to obsess over volume and stuff. I used to obsess over like making sure my intensities were exactly right. I actually I put a video up on YouTube a while back of how to calculate a Arnold equation, so an intensity at a given number of lifts. So it's like how many lifts you do at a given percentage, and you can come out with like a coefficient on the other end of it. And then there's a chart based off of kind of Prelipin's table loosely, where you can like put it in a range of whether or not it's like too much, too little, and then you can apply it to each lift. And then I was doing that for a little while, and I was like, what the fuck am I doing? This is absolutely ridiculous.
Insane. I know what you're talking about.
I just need to go really hard, and then I'll be good. Like that's about it. But like, I don't really like, I don't know. I don't obsess over the volume with the assistant stuff so much. I just always make sure it's trying to get a little bit more in there, like just trying to like, I don't know. I like to stick with the same assistance exercises for like 3 weeks or so. So like the first week, just kind of picking a weight, doing something that feels like a decent pump, try to do 4 or 5 sets of them, and that's it. And then progress that weight over the next 2 weeks to nothing crazy. That's another big point for kind of progressing this over time, is getting away from everything needs to be like heavy as shit all the time too. Like especially with assistant stuff. Like I catch myself like doing something like JM presses and like, oh, these are feeling good today. Fuck it. Let me just do one as heavy as I can or something. And I got to like talk myself out of it, because it's much more beneficial long term to kind of load that a little bit differently, I think. But like, so just like I said, just kind of progressing those assistance exercises. Like I have a list of basically body parts. It's funny how much this sounds like a bodybuilding split or something. I have a list of basically body parts that I would like to train after my main lift is done. So again, I pick those exercises, kind of 3-week waves, 3-week intervals, where starting like kind of furthest out from a meet, those are super general, super basic exercises. So triceps might be something like just tricep push downs or something like that. And then, then over time, just make them a little bit more complicated in 3-week waves as the meet gets a little bit closer. So what I mean by complicated is more specific, really, like more specific to bench press. So like with triceps, it might be tricep push down, something dumb, might go to dumbbell rollback extensions or something on like an incline, and then to something like JM presses and stuff, but still trying to keep that same 4 to 5 set area. So you can progress things not just in volume, but also in complexity, I think. And that's just like that's just another way you can do it. But I honestly, a lot of times I'm not even counting the number of reps I'm doing on assistance work anymore, just to have one less thing to think about. So really, but I mean, it's kind of counterintuitive, because the way people get stronger is handling more volume, more load over time, as long a time frame as possible, like we were talking about before. I just think it is paramount that during that dynamic effort day, that volume needs to be counted and accumulated and planned for, and that's how you progress
for that movement. Movement. I think it's valuable that you tried to break it down into what you were doing with the overall volume, where it gets mind numbing, right? Is because I've done something close to the same for years when I was competing, is when you're talking about volume, like in my brain, I started thinking, well, volume of what? Like first, it's, to me, I'll define volume and workload differently. Volume, sets and reps, workload, you'll add the weight in there. It's just the way I was taught. But anyhow, with that, say in a training day, I may have 4 different categories of movements, kind of like your daily undulating periodization in a way, right? So you got the dynamic movement, which is box A. Box B would be supplemental exercises, which are going to be typically trained in the 3 to 5 range, heavier, And so the intensity, the percentage, obviously going to be higher because the repetitions are 3 to 5. So you need heavier weight, thus higher intensity. And then after that, it's accessory, which is the next box, which is like bodybuilding shit, which 8 to 10, 12 reps, 15 reps in there. So obviously the intensity's got to be lower because the reps are higher. And then the other shit that you just have to do because you want to do, seated calves, whatever it's going to be. So when you start talking total volume, I'm like, well, of what box? Right? Because you can do a fuck ton of seated calves, with 400 pounds, do 300 total reps. That's a big fucking volume, but is it? You see what I'm saying? Like, how do you calculate? You see, so that now that volume of block D, bullshit that you just have to do, or C, the bodybuilding stuff, or B, those are all different. Now, when you add them all together, you end up with basically a spurious number that really doesn't mean shit, because you don't know where the bulk of the volume came from. Do you see what I'm saying? And I used to calculate each one of those blocks, with here's the total volume, here's the total workload, and it typically falls. So I would know, here's how many reps I did in a 50 to 60%, range, and here was the workload. Here's the reps in the 30 to 50% here. Body weight always fucked it up. Like glute ham raises, what's that? You know what I'm saying? Because you say you can only get 8, right? It's not just 0. If you can only get 8, what is that's like 50, 60%. So you don't know. That was one of them I asked Mel Siff about, like, what the fuck? Like, where's hanging leg raises? Like, where do these things go? But it gets so convoluted, right? You're like, oh, fuck, I can't continue to do this. But I think the awareness of those, how they're different does matter, right? Because that first one where I do agree 100 is that first one. That dynamic wave matters. You just can't fuck that. You can't have no structure there. There's got to be some type of structure that builds over a period of time. That second category, the 3 to 5s, that can get a little tricky, because that can push you. That one probably should be thought about. Not tracked, but thought about. The other stuff, hit and miss. A lot of it really depends upon how you feel that day. But most people don't even pay attention at all. 0, zip, done. Or they're just doing what their coach sends them, which is worse than not paying attention, by the way. Or they add it all up, because it's one of those questions that I'll get asked, like, well, how do you track the volume or the workload? And I mean, you're like, oh, fuck. You're like, where do you start? I mean, honestly, like, where do you start?
Yeah.
It's like, fuck, I don't know. Like, what is it now? Are you making progress?
Yeah.
Kind of go from there. With your, how long is that dynamic wave for you? Is it 3 weeks, 5 weeks? Or how's that built out?
I've done a ton of experimenting with that over the years, just because I've read different stuff, and then the whole 3 week wave thing always seemed like very, very short to me. Like it always seemed like it just wasn't like enough to kind of like, I don't know, really get in there. But then I've come back to that now, and I do think that's best for me now, at least. So doing 3 weeks, but then like still a lot of people get to like a deload week, or a week where they're kind of resetting or like pivoting into a new block or whatever you want to call it. And like I don't think, well, just like you're talking about kind of being thoughtless about it, I think a lot of people are thoughtless with like their deload stuff as well, where they're not really planning that out in any kind of coherent way or anything like that. So I think 3 weeks is fine, as long as there is like this unloaded lower kind of volume week in between, and then you can just kind of jump right back into it. And that doesn't seem to really negatively affect anything. You always feel better coming out of that deload week and stuff. So what I mean by less is I'll just like, if I'm using like an average band for 3 weeks or something, I'll just throw a light band on or something for that day, and then maybe cut like a rep off of each set, and then just jump back into it the next week, so that volume's still getting accumulated, and then maybe like move up a little bit in weight or something, or like switch to a different setup or something like that. But 3 weeks with a deload seems to be good for me now. Like,
is that what you found when you say that most people don't put the deloads in intelligently, or strategically is probably a better way to say that? What have you found as far as putting in the deloads in to be more strategic?
I think just how you plan out the percentages you're doing in that wave, I think those deloads should be wave too as the meet gets closer, personally. So I forget. I think it was, I forget what book I read this in, whatever. It was the first place I ever saw where somebody was like planning their deloads in kind of a wave periodization, just like you plan, every other part of training pretty much. But like, so like further out from a meet, you do a little bit more of a deload. When the meet gets closer, so like say you're 12 weeks out, your first deload, maybe you drop 50% of your total volume. So you can do that. You can do that a bunch of different ways. You can do half your sets and reps with the same weight. You can cut the weight in half and do the same, whatever you want to do. I don't think it matters that much. But then, maybe you're doing 50% that first week. Then 3 weeks later, you're doing, instead of 50%, you're doing 40%. And, you're kind of ramping up. So you're still accumulating more volume over time, even on that deload week. And that seems to work pretty well for myself and anyone I've ever like coached for, or programmed for, or anything. Just to kind of ramp up that deload as it gets a little closer, and then the week out, that's totally different. You don't want to do a whole lot or anything, but it seems to work pretty well as long as people aren't getting too beat up or anything like that.
And then they're dropping in every fourth week or so. Yeah,
so it's still a reduction in volume of what they're doing, but kind of as you're moving along, hopefully that volume is kind of up and down, up and down, up and down, and then you have that deload week where the percentage you're dropping off is getting smaller, but it's still an unloading, and you got a little bit of time to rest and recover and stuff.
That makes more sense to think about it critically, though, right? Because one of the things that it's always bothered me with classically structured deload. So let's just say on a linear model, right? So say the lifter goes 70%, 75%, 80%. Deload 50%, right? Then the next week they're going to typically start back up at 75, 80, 85. Well, the difference between that 80, to the 50, and then to the 75 over a 2 week period of time is fucking vast. So when they get back under the 75, which was originally week 2, it's heavy as fuck, because they haven't had that on there, where it makes sense that if that drops less, then you're still going to have that reduction of volume and load, but still have enough weight on your back that when it comes back on your back again, you're not thinking, fuck, because sometimes 50%, it's a big drop, right? Sometimes I don't know if it's pointless, sometimes it's just fucking belt squat, because either way it's a huge reduction. But I don't think they look at that week 3, then here's a deload at 4, of how that week 3 relates to week 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one thing I read it years ago, and I want to go back and read this book again at some point, but Vladimir Isharin had the block periodization book, where he talks about, and this is like a hard thing to find on the internet because probably nobody like fucking understood what he was talking about, but like the residual training effects. So like where, you know, especially for, so like something like endurance training, it's a very low neurological demand. Like there's not a lot, there's not a high like nervous system input to that. You're just jogging pretty much, you know, that's muscular endurance. So like ceasing training of muscular endurance, most people have about 30 days, about a month or so, where you see like you start seeing like decrements in like performance after 30 days after you stop training. So whatever adaptation you gain from that training, stop 30 days later, that's when performance drops off. But with strength and power, his guess was around like maybe as little as like 5 days. So like that all of a sudden makes a deload week sound a whole hell of a lot more important if all of a sudden by day 5, if you're not doing anything or if there's no intensity whatsoever. That's another thing I like doing on my deload weeks where I still hit like a max effort lift, like whatever I just kind of keep my rotation going and everything, but then just kind of drop off most of the assistance work on that day. Just to keep the volume a little bit lower at least, because I really feel better still hitting that like one heavy max effort lift. It just feels fresher when you get back into the next week, for me personally anyway. And I experimented that with some of the people that I work with and stuff like that. But I don't know. It worked well for me anyway. But I always keep that residual training effect thing in the back of my mind because like shit, 5 days. I mean, taking a week off, even if that's a 5% difference in performance throughout that week that you've lost. I mean, that's 5% of your time you wasted leading up to that point. You know what I mean? So I don't know how much it is, or even if that's accurate, because there's all kinds of research on like time off and like the really popular study. I forget who did it, but it was on like rugby players where they took like 2 or 3 weeks off and their strength levels didn't go down or something like that. And I don't know if I believe that. Like, it
gets really complicated though when I listen to shit like that, because it's like, what is time off for one thing, so maybe you can pull out the heavy stuff, but you still do the accessories, so obviously you're going to be able to maintain better doing that than if you just did zero, just did nothing. And then what is the physical state of the specimen? You get some research, right? Going into it. It's, somebody that's been doing this for 8 years and it's at their peak can probably step away for a couple of weeks and come back and not skip a beat compared to somebody that's just been doing it off and on for a couple of years. What is their work capacity, I guess is what I'm saying. All these factors kind of come into play. And what I've seen looking through the bias of a conjugate lens is different people lose certain abilities at different rates, where I've had some that I will pull the dynamic workout per se, lead it into a meet and replace it with more of a linear approach going in, multiple reasons, usually just confidence, experience, having the weight on their back. It's usually not because of training. It's usually or physical attributes. It's usually mental attributes being able to lead into that. Or they're just dead set on doing it. And then you're in a battle that fuck it, make it work, whatever. Where some, as soon as I pulled them away from that explosive component, some after 3 weeks, you could see they lose that little pop out of the bottom. So with them, I would just maintain it with box jumps, just to maintain that motor ability to be able to get them through. Other ones didn't lose a whole lot. At all. Now, other people, you pull the max effort stuff out, they'll lose the ability to strain under time. So where you might be able to see them grind for 4 seconds, all of a sudden it drops to 3. Others, you can pull it out for a month. So I think it's upon the individual, to kind of figure it out for themselves, because I do think that plays into what you should deload too. Whatever you can get away from the longest, it's kind of how block training set up, where you want to put a block in there. And then you hope that the motor ability developed in that block is going to maintain through the next 1 or 2 blocks. And there might be a transition, there might be something in there to help it maintain, but that's kind of how it's built, is even linear. You build the hypertrophy at the front end and you hope hope it's going to be there, you know, when you get to the 1 to 3s. Mm-hmm. That's the hope, you know, and that same thing kind of plays in with this as well. From what I've seen, it's just, again, it's a lot of it can fall into lazy programming, lazy coaching, but then it's funny to me because this will get into a little bit of a rant. It is, but it's fucking funny to me because the same people that won't think about this shit are the same ones that are going to tell you I'm all in. You know, this is all I do. I live for this shit. You know, and granted, they'll take whatever they need to take to be able to live for this shit. But as soon as you say, well, why don't you think a little bit more strategically about your training? Oh, no, my coach does that. You mean the dude that sends you an Excel sheet every fucking week? You've offloaded the entire, you said, it was like, are you fucking kidding me? Or was he ask him to go to bed earlier? Oh, I can't do that. You know, but I thought you were all in. Well, I'm really only all in so I can take more shit. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean,
that's when I watch my TikToks. I can't go further.
Yes, exactly.
But that's so funny you say that because like it seems again I feel like a grizzled old man when I start talking about shit like this. But like another kind of trend that I've seen with like especially younger lifters nowadays. I can't like open Instagram without seeing some like 18-year-old deadlifting like 900 fucking pounds anymore, which is insane. But it seems like there's a lot, the exposure to the sport, there's so many more younger kids getting into it and stuff. And it's, you mentioned just the strategy thing, and this is kind of me going off on a rant now, I guess. But like, it seems like a lot of the younger lifters getting into it have this like really good quality of just blind intensity. You know what I mean? Like they want that, like I'm all in, I want to get after it. Like this is what I want to do. Like, this is my life now, like shredicated, whatever. Like I don't fucking know what the hashtags are now. But like, you get somebody that's all in like that, and then they can do that. You know, some of them get lucky enough to maybe get close to like an all-time world record if they're really proficient in a lift just off of that blind intensity for a couple of years. But then there's this like sharp intersection where if they don't start learning the strategy. And that's the second most important attribute, I think. Mm-hmm. Like if they don't find like whatever, if they're too beat up from training or, you know, they actually end up getting an injury or just it slows down or they're going so hard and like nothing's working anymore. They've just adapted to whatever they were doing that worked before without changing it up or anything. It's, you know, that second piece of finding that strategy at some point. And I have zero athletic, like genetic component to any of this stuff. And I think I just realized early on the strategy portion of it and still had the intensity aspect of it to be able to keep doing it and stuff. And that's it's so hard to explain how important that is to people. But like you said, there's so many people that just outsource. It's McDonald's for training pretty much. It's easy. I can tell this guy what I want to do. He's going to send me my Excel sheet every week and I don't have to think about it. I just do it, you know, and you can do that as hard as you want to. But there still has to be some insight. There has to be some kind of, I don't know, some kind of personal reflective thought process that has to go into it or it's not going to work. So regardless if it's somebody doing their own training or whatever, but I've found that interesting the last couple of years of how many people just come out of nowhere and are like these big, bright, shining, like really good, really strong lifters that do like 4 or 5 meets maybe, and then you never hear from them ever again. And I don't know. That's always interesting to me because you never see like you see stuff where they're getting beat up and they're getting hurt and they're getting frustrated, but you never see anything like, oh, so I went and bought this book to try to figure out what the fuck I'm doing wrong.
No, they haven't figured out how to come out the other side of that, it's easy. I mean, the first couple of years is easy, you know, and it's interesting in the sport now because a lot of more genetically gifted lifters are falling into it. You know, so the first couple of years are easy. So boom, they're breaking all-time world records and they've outsourced all of that. Then they get to this point where it's like, oh shit, you know, now it's not easy anymore, you know, and their coach always sucked. Just they didn't know that they actually sucked. And they'll leave, you know, they'll get hurt. They don't stay around. Where lifters that stay around for a long term have already kind of realized, okay, I'm on an upswing. This is good. Let's push the gas down a little bit more, but not crazy. But let's take advantage of this upswing because you know damn well here comes this fucking plateau.
Yeah, it's gonna crash at some point.
Yeah, and that plateau, it could be a year, it could be 2 years. You just got to ride it out, not fuck things up even worse, fix the weak points, and then it could be awesome if it was fucking linear all the time.
Exactly.
But it doesn't, it goes in steps, and each step that you end up taking, in my opinion, is usually educationally based.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You figure something out because you were stuck, but you don't figure it out till you're stuck. And as you said earlier, you'll map your, and I think this is huge, by the way, you'll map your training out just templated, for a year, which I think is huge. I think people should do it longer than that, to be completely honest.
Totally.
The longer you can do it, the better, because it puts more significance on what you're doing right now. First off, you're going to define your overall objective and say that's 2 years, 3 years out. Then all of a sudden, is maxing out every day on your bench fitting that overall objective 3 years from now, or is fine tuning, your bar path, your, fixing your shoulder, all these things, like what matters most now. People don't plan it out. Granted, you can plan it all out. As you said, it's not going to be what you're going to do, but the phases are.
Yeah.
The phases don't change. It's like, okay, this is condition, whatever you want to call it, conditioning, muscle building, peak, whatever the fuck it is. Off season, preseason, that never changes. It's like, okay, I got to go from point A to point B, and I got these 8 weeks or whatever. It doesn't matter how I do this. I just need to be B, so you can write it all out, but you're going to pivot every day, weight, sets, reps. And I don't think that's what the lifters today are learning. That you learn that by doing it, by fucking it up. It's under the bar, whatever you want to say. And which is crazy to me. It really is, because they're just blindly following every single warm-up set. It could be so old school, like 135, 225, 315. You know what I'm saying? It's just as base as it can be. And then have the days where they feel good. I'm like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to go from 135 to 315 to 50, and we've all done it.
Constant battle.
yeah, I know. It's just so you can save strength for the top sets, right? But then you look back over time and you're like, fuck, I got hurt that time because my work capacity was so low because I was skipping all these other warm-up sets, which accumulate that. Because you've been under the knife a bunch, What do you think are some of the contributing factors that have led to some of the injuries that you've had?
Oh man, yeah, definitely. I've still yet to sustain an injury from training heavy. Like I've still like little aches and pains, little strains and stuff. Like I had my first pec strain ever like a month ago. I was like, what the fuck do I do with this? Like that's never happened to me before. But yeah, it's been a couple of weeks. It's fine, totally fine now. Plus I've been doing more shirted benching anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's been totally fine. But like, yeah, oh man, I think luckily training early on was pretty good and everything. I really believe just playing college football I have a couple of genetic issues. I got scoliosis and stuff, and like I get the way my kneecaps are shaped. It's funny. My sister had a really similar surgery, but she played rugby for like 10 years too. She's a psychopath. But so the way our kneecaps are shaped, they're like basically just shearing articular cartilage off every time they move. So I had to get that repaired in my right knee. I've got to get it repaired in my left knee. I've just been putting it off until the surgery gets better, pretty much. But like, yeah, I think a lot of it's been genetics, and I think a lot of it has to do with years of not paying attention to how I was moving, and just a total lack of education from. And to know, I mean, great sport coaches that I had growing up and everything, but I think a lack of education for those sport coaches to know what good movement even looks like, because it's like, basically if something doesn't hurt, then you must be doing it okay. It must be all right for you, which to an extent it's true. I mean, tissues adapt to whatever the demand is and stuff like that. But even so, I like playing football. I think I always had like really like super weak, shitty ankles, and no one ever told me about it until I've had like 3 surgeries on my left ankle now, because I had one of the bones in it died because I rolled it so much, and I had to get a bunch of fucked up stuff done to it. But like, yeah, I just really think, and especially knowing what I know now and looking back, I think it was just years of being like a poor mover. Like I've seen it. Like I'm not sitting around like Uncle Rico watching my tapes on playing football and stuff like that. But like the times I've like looked at old like football videos of me in like high school and college and stuff like that, I watch myself like running. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, how am I moving around at all, moving like this, or like how I'm lining up in like a 3-point stance and it's terrible and I'm firing out all stupid and wrong and everything. But I was able to like kind of adapt to that and keep going through it. But then it just, I think just being a poor mover for a really, really long time, that I think now being more cognizant of like every single aspect of what I'm doing under the bar and with all the different exercises and variations and stuff has helped tremendously. Like,
what are some other examples of good and poor movement? So, I mean, people listening can apply what you're talking about.
Well, like I said, this is such a touchy subject because there's a lot of kind of evidence-based stuff out there that people will argue against things like this, but there's a lot of people that don't think poor movement exists. Like we were talking about, like techniques, whatever, whatever it is. But like when looking at things from like a mechanical and physics standpoint and stuff, there's absolutely good versus bad movement. Like a really good example for like deadlifts or something like that. There's a lot of proponents of like a rounded upper back deadlift. Like it doesn't matter, your thoracic spine's flexible, you can do it, it's not hurting anything. Why doesn't anybody advocate a rounded back squat? Like if that's if it's such an ideal mechanical position and stuff like that, is where the bar's loaded, is it whatever? That just stuff like, I don't know, stuff like that's never made any sense to me. But I know for me personally, like I mentioned, I think I just had very weak, very unstable ankles. I never paid attention to what like my feet were doing or anything, and then tight football cleats don't really help anything either. But like, I mean, just like a navicular drop when like the bulk of your ankle kind of sinks down and like the arch of your foot collapses and stuff. I was basically doing that with every step I was taking that I could see looking back on. It never hurt then. I'd roll my ankle probably 20 or 30 times throughout the course of the season, not really think about it like, oh, that sucks. But I think that stuff just accumulates over time. So, I mean, like stuff might not hurt while you're doing it, and no matter what people say, you look at like individual, just like moment arms of your vertebrae and stuff. I mean, it's like any deviation of that stuff. And I keep going back to rounded back deadlifts because the shit drives me crazy. But I know a lot of people do it and do it for years without any problems or anything. But is that optimal? Is that like putting the most weight on the bar that you could be doing? I don't know. Probably not, by the way spine kinematics works and stuff like that. But yeah, so I don't. Again, I'm not thoroughly convinced there really is such a thing as poor versus good movement, but there always could be better movement, and not striving for that is weird to me. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Well, when it's come to, because I mean, you've been actively competing this whole time period, going, I mean, all the way back to, there was not really been that big a gap, right? So a lot of these surgeries, be it genetic or whatever it is, you got to figure out when to have them done.
Yeah.
Right. And you're trying to plan the training out and the competing out. So how do you work that through your head?
Man, I don't know if there's any strategy involved there at all. Just like I basically go until pain just sucks too bad. Like this stuff with my knee was wild. It was so fucked up. I actually got into a clinical trial where I have 16 cadaver transplants, and I did some like PRP, the platelet-rich plasma therapy shots and stuff, and like just had all kinds of shit put in there. But like just basically go until the wheels fall off, and I can't. Like one of my surgeries, I had 9 anchors put in my shoulder because I had a 360-degree tear of my labrum, and somehow didn't mess up my rotator cuff, which is apparently like a medical anomaly to tear that and not hurt anything else around it. But like I was like, okay, I can put this off for a little bit, it'll be okay. And then I was at work one day, I turned a doorknob and my shoulder dislocated, and I was like, oh, all right, maybe I should go get this looked at. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Just do it when it has to get done, pretty much. Because the longer this is, I'm not a doctor. First of all, this is probably terrible advice. But like, I mean, the way I consider it, the longer I wait, the better those treatments are going to get, the better the surgeries are going to get. Like the medical technology is going to improve over time. So hopefully, like already this surgery on my knee, the next iteration of it, this was a 2-year recovery time for this one, which took all of 2 years to feel better. It really did. It's now down to 6 months with the new way that they do it. And I actually qualified for that clinical trial for my other knee too. So I don't know when I'm going to get that done, but luckily, like I mentioned it before earlier, like this is the best I felt in like probably about 10 years competing and training and everything. I don't even have any pain in this knee anymore. And it was debilitating, probably like a year or two ago, but just kind of working at it, doing some extra exercises for it and stuff like that, being cognizant of it and everything, it's made a huge difference.
What have you found the most effective ways to come back post surgery?
I can't believe people still recommend like icing shit or like, you know, like there's all kinds of evidence now that that's bad, like bad for the tissue, bad for the recovery process. Just movement is key. And again, kind of in the face of the evidence-based coaches out there and everything, like actual soft tissue work where you're moving stuff around. I'm a big proponent of gua sha. You ever heard of that before? Gua sha therapy. It's like use like a metal scraping tool. It's like really similar to Graston therapy. But you can do it on yourself. It's a little bit easier to kind of implement and do. You can use like the back of a butter knife if you're in a pinch or something like this. But I use that after surgeries and stuff. Just good for opening, just like capillary beds, getting stuff going in there. But just movement. I mean, movement is key. Whatever pain-free movement you can do that, and then do a little more than that the next day. Do a little more than that. As soon as the movement's pain-free, start strengthening it as soon as possible. Even if the 100% movement isn't pain-free, strengthen the movement that is. That's always been. And I mean, I don't feel like I heal any faster than anybody else or anything, but I've been able to come back pretty strong after each one of these things just by those principles. Just move. The day after I had the anchors put in this shoulder, I had the sling off, and I was just doing little pendulum swings, hanging over a table, just like leaning over a table, letting my arm hang, because that actually stretched it a little bit. It felt pretty good. Took some of the pressure off. The nerve block wore off while I was doing it. It felt like shit for a few hours after that. But just kind of leaning over and just letting it swing around. That was all I could do for like a week. And then all of a sudden I could start like kind of moving it a little bit. And then, just trying to just take it step by step, because next thing you know, you start doing that a little bit more every single day, then all of a sudden you can move an empty bar again. Or when the second time I broke my back, as soon as I could fucking stand up again, I had a mini band under my feet wrapped around my head doing good mornings as far as I possibly could until it started to hurt, and then just stopped right before there and did like 20 of them. That was all I could do the first day. Then actually the day after that, I bought a reverse hyper and put it in my garage to start using that again. So it's just pain-free movement, and then just take it from there. And that's not the most technical thing, but I mean, that's the basis of all of physical therapy too.
Yeah. I mean, granted, we're not doctors, we're not physical therapists. Exactly. I mean, I'm checking all boxes here, but you know, with my own surgeries that I've had, injuries that I've had, the first major one I had was a pec reattachment. And I did everything I was told to do. And it took forever. It took like 18 months, a year and a half, you know, to be able to come back totally. I mean, they didn't just put me in a sling. They basically casted me for fucking 8 weeks so I wouldn't do anything. But I dealt with so much tearing of scar tissue, you know, after it was reattached, where every single time I would think I tore my back again. You know, this was a reoccurring problem for forever until I figured out how to work around that. The mental side, you know, of dealing with the dumbass saying I'd never bench 400 again. And I'm not going to make some battle cry and say that I did. You know, it's just whatever. It is what it is. But then, and I do remember Louis at the time, it was when I first came to Columbus, you get that motherfucker, you know, get it off, and it's the first time you ever been under a knife and all this. And like, no, you know, I'm just whatever. And then ever since that one, every fucking one, it was as soon as I get home, this shit is coming off. I'm doing exactly what you're saying, just pain-free. For me, number one was range of motion back. First goal, you know, pain-free movement, range of motion back. And I'd try like a motherfucker to get that in a week. You know, you get these stupid goals. Like in 1 week, when I go back in 10 days, I'm going to have my fucking arm all the way up over my head, you know, stupid shit like that. And then as soon as I could get back in to regular max effort and dynamic work, I did, which sounds fucked up, but follow me for a minute. Is one of the first ones after my shoulder surgery, which was a little bit like what yours was. And I mean, you can't lift your own arm. You know what I'm saying? You can lay on a bench and whatever. I mean, you just can't. Oh yeah. But you can use a broomstick with a reverse band. You know what I'm saying? So that's here, right? And so that max effort day, it was just a matter of, you know, how hard can I pull down to the floorboard, you know, and then press up. And then the next one, it was a reverse band bar, you know, and because every time I would press, you know, you can't let this arm, you know what I'm saying? You got to press at the same force. Yeah. But I can remember doing like the bar in a 2 or something stupid like that, right? And you know, somebody got to help get it out, because then just down to that floorboard, and it took a couple seconds.
Yeah.
You know, to push that. You know, granted, it's not because of the pain. It's just it's disrupted. But they just got in there and cut all the shit up. You got to re-educate it and all that. Yeah. But in my mind, I'm straining on it. You know, for 2 seconds, I'm putting everything that I can into it. So now you just keep moving down that road, and then it goes from 55 pounds to 135 to 350. By the time I get back to that heavier weight, mentally, I've already strained with this thing numerous times.
Oh, yeah.
Where, you know, the way I looked at the other rehab that I did was by the time I got back up, you know, to 400 again, 6, 7, 8 months, I'm like, fuck, is it going to hold? You know, it held with, you know what I'm saying? It held with all the other weight, but is it going to hold with this weight?
Yeah.
Especially with max effort work, because you can go from, you know, go up quick. I'm like, I'm never letting this shit happen again, ever. And oddly enough, you know, back then it was the Antichrist therapy, you know, is what it was. Now it's like people are like, oh, you need to move, you need to move. And so Louis was right, fucking 35, you know, like a fucking again, you know, and he'd have stupid analogies. Like you never see a tiger, you know, if it pulls a hamstring, you never see it. Like, I'm like, first off, I've never seen a tiger pull a hamstring. So where are you coming up with this shit? You know what I'm saying? You know, like a dog's always going to move even if after it gets hurt. I'm like, I never seen a dog get hurt, you know?
Oh man, that's funny as shit. But it's on that same note. I train at the name of the gym's the Bear Cave in Salisbury, Maryland, and Travis Rogers, the owner there, he like big. We were talking about a big lifter. He's fucking ridiculous. But he had a catastrophic injury squatting. I think it was only like 23 weeks ago or so. Tore both quad tendons while squatting at the same time. Under like 700 pounds or something like that. So he had to get that repaired like immediately. It was both legs. So like, he had to get that repaired. So it really just, it's nice hearing you say that. And this is a terrible way to look at this. It's nice hearing you say that. It was cool being around him, watching him come back from this. Cause I haven't trained with a lot of other people that have had like a similar mindset with this kind of stuff. It's like, oh, I'm injured, I'm just going to lay the fuck around until it feels better and stuff. It's like, no, like move. So like Travis had to go into like inpatient care for a little bit. And then the day he was out, he's like back in the gym, like in a wheelchair, like pulling shit, like doing face pulls on the cable machine and stuff and moving around. Then like a week later, he's rigging up some fucking contraption to do pull-ups in his wheelchair, like with it connected. Like there's videos of him doing this shit. It's insane. And then like, I forget, like so he gets cleared, he's walking around in knee braces, like immobilizers and stuff. Like I saw him on crutches for a day, and then he's just walking around in his fucking immobilizers. Same thing, moving around, doing whatever he can. He's like, I was talking to him about it. He's like, well, these are locked in. I could probably do some straight leg deadlifts, I think. Like, okay, this is getting a little fucking crazy here, man. But then he gets those taken off. He's moving. He took the knee braces and hung them up in the middle of the gym like some fucked up like macabre coat of arms. It's just like in the corner of the room, like crossed over like this. But like, and I think he just did his first meet back at like 20 weeks later and deadlifted 700 pounds. Just a deadlift only meet and stuff. And it said like he literally moved as soon as he possibly could. So I don't know what the timeline is normally for like a quad tendon rupture and repair and stuff, but it's not fucking 20 weeks.
Oh, no. It's going to be longer than that. Some people, it's career ending.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You know, so it's, for me, I could never end like that. You know what I'm saying? I would have to at least come back and do something just to know that the injury wasn't 100%, you know, the whole thing, and go that direction. With you've ranted a lot or gone back and forth a lot with the evidence-based stuff that you see out there. What's the biggest thing with that bothers you the most?
Yeah, I don't know what this is like it's not like a recent development. I've seen like evidence-based coaching, whatever, for years now, I guess. And it seemed like it made sense at first. It's kind of an offshoot of like the functional training stuff when people realized like this might not be the best thing ever anymore, I guess. So people took it another step, but it's like this whole slew of an industry where people like basically just glimpse over the abstracts of a scientific research paper on a thing and then sell a program based on that, and based on like definites and stuff. And I'm too active on the internet. Again, I know this shit's bad for me, but like I'm in a bunch of different Facebook groups and stuff and Instagram, follow these pages. But like there's always these evidence-based like coaches that are like touting stuff like nutrient timing doesn't matter. So there's a lot of evidence to suggest that it really does. So like even like in the same breath, they'll say something like nutrient timing doesn't matter, but if you have a meal close to working out, you still have you still have your amino acids turning over and positive nitrogen balance for a long period of time. So like, so if you time out your nutrients, it matters for training and everything, but like nutrient timing doesn't matter at all. So they're talking about like the anabolic window after training, which is negligible at best, I guess. But like people that are like, I don't know, shitting on people for saying they want it, like, I have a protein shake ready after the gym so I can, that's fucking worthless. You're wasting your time or something like that. There's like evidence that like glycogen resynthesis is higher for 2 hours after training because of this like non-insulin mediated contraction dependent thing that happens in some muscle, some different like shuttling mechanisms on the outside of your muscles and stuff like that. So it's called like GLUT4 translocation. And they're like, again, you need to read like an exercise metabolism textbook to understand what the fuck that means and everything. But that's like, that's a case in point physiological thing that like hard contraction with your muscles, all of a sudden you can uptake more nutrients specifically to that muscle that you worked. And that's like, here's a book about it. Like, here's, oh no, fuck that. Like, I read this one article I saw, it said it didn't make a 1% difference. And like, meanwhile, you got guys like Alan Aragon and Brad Schoenfield, the two big, I always say his last name wrong, two big nutrition guys that like, I've seen them at seminars where they talk about nutrient timing and they talk about their evidence for it and stuff. And it's just like, there might not be a big difference, but both Alan and I have a protein shake right after we lift because we want every benefit we can. Like, that's the fucking take home point right there, regardless of anything else that they said this whole entire time. But again, nutrient timing is a bastardized thing in evidence-based coaching. And I don't know, like soft tissue modalities is another one, like, foam rolling doesn't do anything, stretching doesn't do anything. Like, I feel bad if I don't foam roll or stretch. Like, so that's not bad for me. Like, you're telling me I'm wasting my time. Like, I feel better doing that. But it's just a bastardization of what science is supposed to be. Like, none of those papers are definite answers to anything, but it's how they built their whole entire business of their evidence-based coaching methodology, snake oil, whatever the fuck they're doing. You know what I mean? So it's just that stuff that's infuriating to me because I love research and I love doing it for fun because I'm a fucking psychopath, I guess. Yeah. But like, I love reading that stuff. So like, I'll find the whole paper on a thing and like, hey, you missed this whole fucking like 5-paragraph limitation section that says none of this fucking means anything. And you're like, you're telling people to do this. Like, it's ridiculous. So
I don't pay that much attention to it. So they're cherry picking papers. That's been happening for years, but they're ignoring fucking meta analysis and stuff like that. Completely?
Well, it depends on the specialty of the person. There's plenty, and again, I'm just talking about like the shittiest version.
No, I get it. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Because it seems like there's more and more of it because as soon as people realize like, I share this study, it gives me some validity, and people want to talk to me about it and buy my shit and everything. So like, so like there's people that'll actually change their opinions on things, and I try to not get locked into any specific bias and stuff, and I try to be aware of that when I'm doing it too. But everybody's terrible at it. It's a survival mechanism, I guess. But like, so just ignoring other things that exist, like ignoring the practical anecdotal application of a thing. Like I remember during the Olympics, the last Olympics, there were a couple of big swimmers that had all the cupping bruises on their back. And I just remember seeing people losing their shit, like, they're wasting their time. They're doing all this shit all wrong. That's not doing anything. While they're actively medaling in the fucking Olympics. Like, okay, that obviously didn't get them to where they are. But I mean, how are you going to argue like a win? You know, there's got to be some just nuance. Nuance is dead in lots of things nowadays. I think. But like just lack of nuance when it comes to stuff like that, just because it's a research paper that they found that agrees with their bias that they have already, is infuriating to me.
So it are most of these in support of what they're trying to what they're trying to promote, or is it in objection of things that other people are doing?
It depends. I think it depends on what. I think it really depends on what gets them the most attention, honestly, more than anything. Like, I really think that's it. Like, I mean, like, very prevalent examples like the Liver King guy. Like, there you go. Like, there's obviously evidence that a nose to tail meat diet might be good for some people with like autoimmune diseases and shit like that. But like, bastardizing everything else that exists is just there's got to be some nuance, because that other stuff works for people too. There's some people that were bitten by a Lone Star tick and now they can't eat red meat anymore because they're allergic to it because they got that enzyme or whatever. So like, obviously that person shouldn't be on a carnivore diet or something like that. But that's obviously an extreme example. But I think it really just depends on what they're selling or at what given point. I mean, it's the same thing as same thing as like those ladies men instructors, people that teaching people how to like talk to women and pickup artists. That's what I'm looking for. Similar. Everybody's got a bias they try to confirm with anything, I think. And that's just that I don't know why that pisses me off more than anything, because I enjoy doing this stuff, and I think people should have access and not unbiased information, but all of the information available. So if you say this is the only thing that works because this says so, ignore everything else. So that's kind of fucked up.
It is weird. It is fucked up, right? Because it's what sells, which makes you really question the intelligence of people in the industry. You know what I'm saying? Because the nuance matters. And isn't that just society in general? We've removed nuance from everything at this point, so there's just two sides and that's it. There's no middle, no nuance. But, in this fitness strength industry, it's kind of always been that way, where I always sit back and I'm like, people can change minds, things do change, it's like, fuck, I shouldn't, it's evolving, it's becoming educated. And if you're still doing the same shit you were doing 30 years ago, I'd really question your intelligence. Because you didn't have it figured out then, you don't have it figured out now. But typically those people don't get attention. They don't have the followers they don't have, because they're not speaking in absolutes and removing. You can speak in absolutes and remove nuance and be right on everything or be wrong on everything. It's just how you strategically want to be able to do it. But I've been around long enough. You've been around long enough. Those people don't last. So they sometimes hit, sometimes don't. I think most of the time they don't. Like, we just think they do. Some do, but most of them don't. It's just like, okay. And it's fun when you're at a little bit of a distance from it and you don't rely on your income from it and all the other things, because you can look and say, you can see it. You can see like the next trend, like here it comes. And it's been so long for me now. It's like, oh fuck, here it comes again. It's like, this is the next one. Like, I'm still waiting for the next pop of HIIT training or DC training, the low volume, high intensity, high effort, I should say, training. Cause it's been a while. It's like, okay, it's been the high volume. It's like, you can feel it under the surface, and a year from now, whatever, boom, there. Hey, if you don't have time to train, you can go in for 15 fucking minutes and just do, and it's coming. And the same thing works in powerlifting with different protocols, with different programming. It will come into vogue, then it'll come out. Meanwhile, it's crazy when you really kind of get it, because it's all the same.
This is why you got to start making Nautilus equipment. So it's gonna
because they're chains and bands, right? I mean, that's what you got.
Same
that's the ghetto version of the Nautilus equipment, is the cam. You got the chains and the bands. What have you, staying on that topic, what have you found with those that's helped or not for yourself?
For like accommodating resistance stuff?
Yeah, let's separate the bands and the chains, because I do think they're two different animals.
Totally.
The bands, you have success with those, or not so much, or here and there?
I love them, because like I've always been super explosive. Like, I've been able to dunk a basketball since middle school, and I'm a shitty athlete otherwise. It's like the only thing. Like, I've always been really good at jumping, sprinting, and stuff like that. So like I like using tons of band tension on stuff, because that that causes me to do what I'm bad at, which is like straining through a max effort and maintaining technique. And that's something that's been a constant battle the whole entire time I've been doing this stuff. So I'm a fan. I don't like, I just had this conversation with a different coach on another podcast a while back, where like he was a proponent of not using bands pretty much at all, like leading up to a meet and everything, especially with like raw lifters, and like just saying like it's the eccentric stress is a little too much, it's a little too different than the regular lift and stuff like that. And I have the total opposite opinion. I think more people could benefit from doing a little bit more band tension and stuff, just because like you still, even with the big contrast in weight and everything, that's such good practice for being under the weight you're going to use and everything. But just like, even if you're using like briefs or something like that, even if you still have to brace, you still have to have that postural control, and you still have to strain against that. And I just think, I don't know, I'm still a big proponent of everybody using them. So, and I know that's kind of a weird, even that's kind of like a weird opinion to have now with that, even with like raw lifters and everything. And I do get the arguments how it kind of blocks the bar path in. So I don't think you should use it all the time, obviously. I use it most of the time for my speed work. So, I mean, I'm using it at least once a week for ad nauseum forever. But like, even on max effort lifts, I love throwing like a light band on deadlifts, or doing like a mini band or a reverse band or something for bench press. I get a ton out of that still. And I don't know if it's people just not sticking with it long enough to give it a shot, really, because they do it and they're fucking exhausted the first couple times they use bands, like, oh, this is terrible for you, or they just don't like rotate it in appropriately. But yeah, as far as those go, I don't think they beat you up enough to not use them ever. You know what I mean? For everybody, I think it just takes a little working them in, a little figuring out what works for you. But especially picking the appropriate band tension. That's actually how I got the pec strain that I had mentioned before. I had the thickest bands I could find in the gym on a reverse band bench press, and that was just stupid. And I self-unrack when I'm like raw benching and stuff. So as soon as I took it out, I put it right back in. I was like, this is the dumbest fucking thing I could have picked to do today. And just as soon as I unracked, it was like, shit. But as far as chains, I mean, those are, especially for deadlifts, I don't know if there's anything better for improving. I'm a big believer in like the forced posture curve stuff. You see it like, I know Louis talked about it all the time, and there's some like text on it and stuff out there. But I really think chains help correct any issues you have with that forced posture curve area. I mean, bands do to an extent too, but there's nothing like the stability overhaul of like pulling against a bunch of chains or squatting against a bunch of chains. But specifically deadlifting and benching with chains are probably my favorite max effort lifts to do. Just because, again, that it's interesting that people are against stuff like that, like pretty vehemently, and then can never answer the question, like can never recognize like where people fail on their lifts most of the time. So if you're picking good lifts, good attempts, you're gonna lose it probably. You're not going to lose it in the bottom. You're not going to lose it at the midpoint. You're going to lose it kind of near the top, with everything pretty much. So like obviously from a physics standpoint, that makes zero sense. Your mechanical advantage improves the closer you get to lockout. So obviously something else is going on. Well, that's where forced posture curve comes in and makes sense. And all of a sudden, like maybe it's not just mechanical advantage. Maybe there's some sort of velocity component that I'm missing out on, some sort of technical component that I'm missing out on. And nothing trains you how to stay in those positions better, I think, than bands and chains, where you have to constantly be pushy. Like you can't fuck around with that. You can't slow down with those. Yeah. Like you're going to get crushed to death.
Well, the contrasting argument that, as I always question, was they'll say that the bands, most of the raw lifters are going to miss out of the bottom, or they're going to miss at the bottom of the bench. So you just stated that that's not always the case. And we'll talk about the forced posture curve here in a minute, where I'm like, well, where the fuck do you think multiply people miss? They say, but it's for different reasons, so if they're actually squatting to parallel, right, where, I'll be the first to admit a lot aren't, right. But it's a different skill set too, because I'm going to call parallel with multiply different than raw. I'm going to go hip joint. Just people can bitch, argue, whatever. I don't care. But I'm going to go hip joint to knee. But the skill with that, you might kind of know this with single ply, it's evolved, is to be able to get there, you're going to go through a point where you're going to start to see stars first, and then the world's going to start to like get dark because of the pressure that the gear has. And the more gear, the more pressure. By the time you're at that midpoint, we'll just call it midpoint, you're about ready to get knocked the fuck out. I mean, but if you never get there, then you don't have that. But the other thing that happens at that midpoint is you're either going to pass out, or you're going to come back before you pass out, or you're going to tip over, because you're sitting back, to the gear. So that's why you'll see if they're squatting low, there's the caveat, because it doesn't happen if they're not going close to that parallel, right? But if they go down in there, that's typically what happens. They're going to go down there, they're going to fall out of the groove, right? With the bench shirt, they're going to bring down, and they're not going to be able to touch, right? It's the bottom that's it falls out of the groove. So hence, where's most multiply lifts miss? Fucking bottom. So it's that argument doesn't work for me. It's even though it's not true, it doesn't work. Talk a little bit more about the force posture curve for the people that don't know what we're talking about.
So I think the best example, probably the best example would be like a bench press, because that's where like velocity gets lost the fastest, I think, probably for most people. Like, so, like I mentioned before, you just have, realistically, as the bar approaches lockout, that should be, mechanical advantage is improving. So you can unrack and hold probably 300% of what you can bench press most of the time, something like that. Like just isometrically hold it there. If you tried to bring that down to your chest and press it back up, obviously it wouldn't go anywhere. It would stop down there and you wouldn't be able to press it. But there's just a postural component to strength, and that's why technique is important, really, and that's why being able to move through these different transitional points throughout the lift is important. So like for bench press, most people will, again, this is assuming attempt selection is good, because for raw lifting, when people miss a lift in the bottom, they just pick too much fucking weight.
There's one caveat where you're just not strong enough.
There's no weakness there. That was just a shitty attempt selection, and you did too much. So like, it's funny. I always answer that question like that when I see it asked and stuff, or people ask me. It's like, well, do less. Like you're not doing too much, but like you'll get it every time. But like. So like if it's like a weight that's just like right at a limit weight that's not going to lock out, you see people like from the chest, you probably get a pretty decent speed to a couple inches off right till you get to that transition point where the triceps are majorly taking over for the lockout and everything, and losing that speed in that transition point is an aspect of the force posture curve at play there. So, the bands and the chains and everything, being able to press through that midpoint with a little bit more acceleration, being able to accelerate and then have a little bit more velocity going through that point just greatly improves your ability to lock it out. Because as soon as velocity hits zero, you're fucked. That's a mislift right there. It's not going anywhere anymore, 99% of the time anyway. So like, it's just building speed through those transition points where kind of the majority of the work posturally is changing somewhere. It's kind of a, same thing from the bottom of the squat to the top of the squat. Or, it's amazing to me how many people miss deadlifts like above the knee, because that's probably like the craziest example, because all you have to do is push the strongest muscles in your body forward an inch and it's locked out, but people drop it before they get there. So like you just constantly trying to build that speed to overcome that force posture anomaly, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. What going back to your online frustrations, I'm trying to think about it. What are some of the other ones that are bubbling up now, like currently? Because I don't pay attention to that. I mean, I post, and I don't want to say I post and ghost. I watch the comments enough on my own shit just to pin to, because you're supposed to do that. But then I don't pay fucking attention to a whole lot of anything.
That's hilarious. I'm just people being overly confident about things, like there's, I don't know if it's like, and not even necessarily like industry people or anything, but there's the influx of like online coaching is insane to me. Like you can go like, and and not even like underqualified people, like whatever, you got to start somewhere. Like zero experience, whatever. Even competition experience, whatever you do, a meet, and you want to try coaching people, whatever, go for it. Charge them $5 a month or something just to try it out. See what you like doing, whatever. That's how you get better. But like you get like people that are running like fitness meme pages that have like a link to their coaching, like their coaching pages and stuff. And I've seen that a lot lately. That is like people that have like 50,000 followers because they have like a super like whatever meme page.
Yeah. And
like, it's just like, oh, click here for my coaching program, or like, you know, my lifting program or whatever. And the guy is like 30 something years old with like a 300-pound squat. And like, I don't know. It's just, not that strength level means anything, but that's always super interesting to me. I think we might see more and more. There's already too fucking much of it. Like these almost like influencer kind of people getting into it, but like aren't even in the same discipline. Like that guy's like a graphic artist or something like that runs the meme page. It has a couple of funny jokes that he's ripping off of other meme pages that he follows that also offers a coaching template or like a powerlifting program or something that I don't know. This shit shouldn't bother me this much.
The thing that's always, and I come from a different generation too, so I understand where my bias comes from. Where, you know, I had to travel to learn from people, or you called them on the phone. It was more just consulting. If I was to break it all down over all the years, or people I trained with and consulting, and then whatever you learn in school, education, books, shit like that. So 3 different ways. Basically, I learned to be a better lifter, well, doing it, you know, so that's kind of part of that whole thing, where I don't understand from what I can see, the number of competitors, not beginner competitors, but just competitors that like absolutely don't want to have anything to do with their own programming. It's just, I don't get it. It's like, is it a rite of passage to be able to say, I have a coach? I mean, does that make the person more legitimate, more of a competitor, more of an athlete? I mean, it does it. Like I can understand the top lifters or medium lifters having coaches, you know, people to call for, say they're stuck, like, fuck, I don't know what to do. And then say they want to buy an hour of your time, 2 hours a year, just to sit down and diagnose what the fuck's going on. Yeah. You know, I can see that, because then they're going to take it, they're going to put it into what they've learned about themselves. And because that's essentially the same thing that we all did as I was coming up. You know, it's like, here's this, you find a group you're with, you stay with the group. If they don't know what they're doing, you find somebody to call, you call them, you kind of brainstorm what's going on, then you find a different group, you just kind of move through. But at some weird point in time, it came from, you know, that to my coach is. I'm like, so a lot of the times they're actually pimping their coach more than they're actually pimping their own lifting. I'm like, fucker, you're still lifting the weight. You know, you're still doing the work. You know, but I don't get it. That would be my one rant there, is I don't get it. And I know there's a lot of really good coaches out there that can help people. They're rare, you know, they're very fucking rare.
Especially now.
Yeah, because, well, I mean, there's the whole, if we want to talk about nuance, you know, let's remove nonverbal communication. Let's not look at the warm-up sets. Let's only look at the top sets, which are going to be fucked up anyhow because they're top sets, you know, and ignore sleep, ignore all this other shit, and just charge $200 a month and you think there's a fair value. You know, it's just, you know. Yeah,
no, I get you. And this might be a really shitty way to look at it, but it's like, I don't know if a lot of people, like a lot of people that are newer into the sport, I think, and that are looking to get a coach and hire somebody based off of their fucking memes or whatever it is. It's almost like they go through that programming, they go through that stuff with that coach. And I did like a little poll, and I asked a bunch of people about this. I was trying to figure out if we could estimate how many meets somebody actually does in their powerlifting career on average. And everybody I talked to said 1. Like, and that's like, so as far as somebody that just wants to come in and try the sport, they started lifting in CrossFit or something like that, or whatever. But I was trying to get up with people that actually like hired like hired a coach to try to figure out like what they want to do with the sport and everything. And it seems like there's almost like a disconnect a little bit where the like you have something else to blame. You have an outside influence, because if it's not your training, there's no real investment into it outside of the money that you paid this coach. So like you do it, you get stronger, awesome. You do it, you don't get stronger. This is fucking stupid, and that's their fault. You know what I mean? So it's almost like passes the responsibility off of the lifter to the coach, to some aspect. I think is a big part of that.
That could be. I'm getting a little static. In the headphones. Yes. But that's classic powerlifting though, right? Because you never missed a weight because you weren't strong enough, right? So I guess now I can understand it.
that's
that
makes sense.
The shirt didn't fit right, suit didn't fit right, I didn't sleep right, there was something wrong with the peanut butter in my peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I wrote an article one time. I wrote like 125 of these excuses for why you could miss a lift.
I read that. That was fucking awesome.
There's a bunch of them, So I guess but it's a little fucked up because now you're blaming somebody else instead of a peanut butter sandwich.
I think that has more to do with it than anything else, to be totally honest. It's kind of, again, that's a fucked up way to look at it, but it falls in line with everything else like that.
Because I've seen some stupid shit. That people have been programmed to do, just over the past couple years, that I really question the intelligence of the person that's helping them.
Yeah.
To a large degree, stupid shit. I don't even want to give examples because some of them are so fucking stupid. Just let's start the whole training phase off by maxing out on everything to see exactly where you're at. There's a fucking good one. I can go on forever. It's just pivoting. Whatever. And it's bad. It's bad, especially when it's better lifters. You would think that at some point in time, as I kind of ranted about a little bit earlier, at some point in time, the lifter is going to take that personal accountability for their own success.
Well, you have to. That's the whole intersection of that intensity strategy thing I was talking. It has to fall back into some kind of responsibility, or if they're serious about it, or if I don't know, if they're not just doing it because they experience lifting weights at CrossFit, which a lot of people do, which is awesome, or they, whatever. They saw powerlifting on what's been popping up on ESPN more and more recently, which is kind of cool, getting people into it, I guess. But there's got to be something, kind of point where the reins need to be taken away, and that's I'm a huge advocate of this, of people not hiring a coach and like finding some people that have been doing this stuff for a long time and asking them for resources or asking them questions or something, just to save your fucking money for a couple of months at least before you dive into it to see if you even need to.
Well, an odd thing that's happened over the last 3-4 years, I bet, is every time I would do Instagram AMA, the one question I always knew was going to happen was, what book should I read? Training wise, business wise, whatever it's going to be. And I got the list that I'll copy and paste, but back then I did. Now I don't even have the list anymore because I haven't seen that question in years, and now I don't want it. Don't send it because I got to go find the fucking thing and make another list again. I'm sure it's on a blog I posted somewhere, but it was so frequently I had to keep it in a notepad to be able to copy and paste from that. And now it's just not, now it's these really, I respect any question. So I understand that because somebody's got to have the balls to ask the question. So that for a lot of people, that's the big first step. Now, but most of them are so freaking generalized. It's what do I need to do for my lockout?
Yeah, how do I squat?
Just things like that, which I guess is a good start. But they could. I hate to say this, but they could Google it, and then at least if you see people that are doing AMAs that know what they're doing and they're intelligent, or you're gonna pin a question out to them, and if you really want them to be able to help, provide a little context. you know, because everything starts with it depends. Then if you really want to give an answer, you're going to give 3 or 4 scenarios. And you're like, I can't tap this shit out. You know, or you're just going to say, or this, you know, or whatever it's going to be. And so there's the failing kind of on both, you know, on both ends, to where I don't think the people who are doing the coaching want to educate themselves, which is bad, really bad, you know, because when you think, if that's your profession, the one way that you can be better at your profession is to become more educated in it. Now, granted, they still need to know market. They still need to know the other components of the business, but you have to have a viable product, you know, before it's kind of the law of business, and they don't do that. But I think on the other end, people are, a lot of it just become lazy. And we can be hypercritical about all the information that is online, but there's a lot of information online. And it's really not, the argument that I've always had a tough time trying to swallow was, there's too much. I'm like, are you a complete fucking idiot? You know, because you can search anything. I can search any topic, even if I don't know shit about it, and pretty much eliminate 60% or 70% of whatever I'm looking at. Because it's a giant ad. You know what I'm saying? It's whatever. It's just, it's all. So yeah, there's a shit ton of information that's out there, but 70% of it, any idiot's going to know. The hell is the whole first page of Google with anything you search. It's trying to sell something. It's a store, it's a product, or a video trying to sell something. So you can, you see what I'm saying? It's like, it's not,
I get you.
You can get to some pretty viable content pretty quick. Anybody can, you know, anybody can, but they don't, you know, and that's kind of the problem, to where that's that side. The other interesting side is the, you know, the positioning, you know, that what you're talking about essentially is what it is.
That's funny. The
positioning of the industries, and the people in the industry trying to get more business and thinking that it's going to help them get more business, which is so funny to me. You know, because it's either people, well, they might be, no, I'm thinking, either people are way more stupid than I thought, which that could actually be true, or the people doing the positioning aren't getting the business that they say they're getting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with how easy it is to purchase followers or whatever, you know, I don't know. It's hard to tell anymore, but I like, on, I won't mention any names with this, but I was curious. I found Dr. Yesus. I found him on Facebook. He's got a Facebook page on there. He puts some information out occasionally on it. And he had something like, I want to say it was like 300 followers or something like that. Yeah. It was something like offensive for somebody that's smart and puts out a bunch of good information and stuff. And then this guy who has had a semi-popular YouTube page that sells his coaching, he's done all these videos on like how he has helped top tier lifters beat drug tests and like all this stuff. And he's been doing this for like 20 years now. And and the guy at the time I checked this out, he had only done one competition in like United Kingdom or something somewhere, I forget, but he only done one competition, and he totaled 1,200 pounds in single ply. And at 275, which again, people's numbers, whatever. But then I found his page on Facebook, and he had something like 95,000 followers on there. And I just like, I don't know, that almost made me start crying, just because of the same thing we're kind of talking about here, of how does this work? You have like one of the guy like translating like Russian sports science texts. And I've actually seen Dr. Yesus like speak a couple of times, and it's never not awesome. And then you have like this guy who is an expert in nothing and is literally just making shit up off the top of his head pretty much. And I don't know. It's just it's a weird state of affairs. The internet is a weird fucking place.
No, it is really weird, right? Because the guy with more of the 90,000 followers, if anybody was to DM them or ask them a question, they're probably not going to get anything back, because there's so much going to them anyhow. Where if you find that person, a lot of times, not always, but like a Yesi's, and if they are active, you know, they're on there, they're going to probably reply. You know, and it's like, well, shit, that's the good thing about it, is we now have access to pretty much anybody. You know, for the most part, you have more, let's put it this way, you have access to way more people than you think you do.
Yeah.
You know, because not everybody is hiring somebody to, let's just critically think this through. Not everybody is hiring somebody to run their Instagram. Because would you? You know what I'm saying? Let's say you had a big Instagram and you're going to hire somebody just to run it. They can post whatever the fuck they want. Are you cool? You know what I'm saying? Like, how many people are really cool with that? So more people are running their own than what people think they actually are. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to see your DM, because more and more can come in there, but it's more than people think. But they won't. You know, they'll get mad because they can't get the DM to the person that probably can't help them. You know, but then not take advantage of the people that probably could, you know, which is ridiculously insane to me. But
that's interesting.
It's crazy though, but it's true. I mean, it's probably true in any profession if you go that route, you know, even with business consulting, the same shit happens every profession.
Oh yeah.
Like, you can find the business guru, like, oh, that guy's got the answers, you know. Then you can find somebody that's got a few hundred followers and they own 30 fucking businesses, and you know, they're retired, and those, you know, help you for a fraction of the cost, if not free, just because they want to be able to. But you don't do the research to be able to find those differences. It's just the fucked up world that we live in. But I do think that when people are speaking in absolutes, you know, the things that drive you crazy, I do think that if they're going to do that, then they should get pushback, you know, and they should be able to answer for their push. And that does happen, by the way. You know, you see that on YouTube, Instagram, you see it happen quite often, you know, where a lot of the times people are just going to ignore it because they don't care, you know, but at least it opens the perception of the other people that are, you know, following that, well, maybe there's a point here. Well, there is, dumbass. You know, anything in absolutes is probably not going to be true.
No, I am blocked by a lot of people. I understand. I understand completely.
Yeah. What are some of the other ones? We kind of got off track there, but some of the other things that you're seeing outside of, you know, that's popping up as new bullshit.
Yeah, just I don't know. I mentioned it to you before. There seems to be like, and again, this is going back to people kind of bastardizing research a little bit and stuff, like just people that are so overly confident on whatever program they're selling or whatever they're doing or anything, just based on like the research component to it, based on what the research says about like periodization or something like that, like long-term training theory and stuff. Most 99%. There's a researcher. His name's John Kiley. I think I said his name right. John Kiley. You can Google him, whatever. But he's actually written a couple of papers on why like all periodization science is complete and total bullshit. Because well, you had tapped on it a little bit before, where it was just like we're not taking into account sleep. We're not taking into account any outside stressors. We're not taking into account like the 25% of outliers in this periodization study that didn't get any stronger. So we just kind of cut them out, and we're just going to focus on this big group over here that had never lifted weights before, and they did pretty good. Yeah. Like you know what I mean? So it's just it's a lot of stuff, you know, and that kind of trickles over into like there's a lot of science on like rating of perceived exertion and stuff. And I talk about this shit sometimes. People get really mad at me, but like, so you have like, well, like the whole RPE scale thing wasn't it. I mean, originally it's called the Borg RPE scale. It was on a scale from 6 to 20. And that is like a really arbitrary notion for like lifting weights. Cause like, how do you like, what's the difference between a 13 and a 14 when you're lifting weights or a 17 and an 18 or something? So it's arbitrary for that because it wasn't designed for that. It was designed for like timed events like sprints or, you know, mile runs or something like that. So, and that 6 to 20 scale is actually really correlative to what your heart rate is at any given moment. So if you say you're at a 15 RPE, that most people can guesstimate what their heart rate is at on that RPE scale after they've been like trained in it a little bit. So there's actually a lot of cool research on that because the 6 to 20 scale is what's used in most research that uses an RPE scale that's not testing a 1 to 10 RPE scale or whatever. So like this 1 to 10 RPE scale just kind of came up. It wasn't really used in any research before, but like it kind of made sense for programming and progressing training and stuff like that. So a lot of people, I mean, you can't see a post on Instagram without somebody saying, "Oh, this is at an 8 RPE." Like, what does that even mean? Because you're using a scale that wasn't even designed or designated for this purpose at all. and it's completely arbitrary. I mean, it's completely subjective, but even with that in mind, it still works for people. Like it's just such an interesting, like, I don't know, a paradoxical thing that you're using this thing completely wrong. And it's to a point where people can't even explain it correctly. So a lot of times people say like I've seen like coaches and stuff even explain it this way, where it's like, oh, an 8 RPE is something you go to where, you know, you have 2 reps left in the tank until failure, or, you know, a 9 RP is 1 rep left, a 10 is a 10, you don't have anything left, which I would argue most people have never even been there. They've never even like made it to that area before. But like, but that's all that is reps in reserve. That's a completely different system of subjective measurement for intensity and stuff. Plus we already have a measure of intensity with percentages. So like, that's been confusing to me since I found out that was a measurable thing that people use to kind of like quantify and progress training, because, and a whole other issue with it too, if you do like 3 sets of 5 at an 8 RPE, only one of those sets can be the same weight. Like the weight has to go down because you're accumulating fatigue.
Yeah. So
you can't do 400 pounds for 5 for all 3 sets and say that's an 8 RPE. That doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? So like, there's so many issues with it, but that is the gold standard of programming at this point right now. It seems like a lot of people are, I mean, there's a lot of moving away from percentage-based stuff for RPE stuff. And again, the paradoxical part of it is it seems to work, you know, and like people still get stronger doing it to an extent, as far as I can tell. It's a lot of people use it, and a lot of people, you know, seem to be doing more with it.
It depends on, I mean, it's the question there is who's the people?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and like how progressed are they? You know, and because you get to a certain phase, just putting 5 pounds on a lift a year is a great accomplishment, because the first thing is you got to get back to where you were before you can get above that. And with the periodization debate that you're talking about, the percentages themselves are even foggy, because you're basing that on what? You know, is that your competitive max, which had, you know, a deload before, rest, recovery, you know, then the competitive state, which can be 5% higher, you know, or is that a training max? And then, you know, the percentages vary day to day based, are you sick? Are you ill? Are you not recovered? You know, so fuck, the percentage is already, you know, that's where, to me, the answer has always been, you know, auto-regulation is what, that goes back to figuring shit out for yourself. You see what I'm saying? It all kind of always rolls back to that learning how to do this shit, you know, without having to rely on somebody saying, do X percent. You know, like what weight should you be using X amount of weeks out? You know, you should kind of figure this shit out, because I get what they're doing. They're all measures to try to help people that don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, to do something. And the percents are, I mean, it used to just be percents, right? It was just percents. I'm going to just go out on a limb. I don't have any factual data for this, and just say people wanted to quit using percentages because the other thing sounded better. You know, and if it sounds better, then they're going to sound different. Then if they sound different, then more people are going to be attracted to what their program is, because it's not the same percent shit everybody's been using for the last 30 years. So, RPE, and then whatever the next one, there's like 5 different variations that whatever it is. And then that it's bait. You know, it's the bait to be able to pull people in. But, you know, it's some level you can probably find, as you said, the RPE 8 is the same as 80% to somebody else, which is the same as 2 reps in reserve to somebody else. What the fuck? You know, it's like, you know, like, what does this mean? You know, where the true answer is, you know, who you working with. You know, this is, say you're stuck, you need help, and we're talking. I'm like, okay, well then how do you train your accessories? Like what, you know, how hard do you push them? Then we agree on what you think that is. Yeah. You know, 8, whatever, 2 reps in reserve, like cool. Have you tried to go like 1 rep in reserve? Now there's a variable we can play with that we both agree on what that base anchored standard is for each person, right? Which I'm going to go out on a limb again. Like, you think the online people are setting the anchors for the people that they're working with? Fuck no. You know, they're just sending the shit out, you know, which is, it's again, that's another one though, that over the years will wave off of one thing and then go to the other. So maybe now it's RPE, and give it a couple years.
I'm trying to stay ahead of that. I want to come up with a mindfulness training system where you like sit and you meditate about the weight you're going to use for like 15 minutes when you first get to the gym, and then that's how you pick it.
That would work. You just need a scale. You know, you put the scale with it. It could be your oh man, we have to think about that. Isn't
that what Scientology uses?
Yeah, something like.
What's your feeding levels today? That's going to be your percentage.
Yeah, now somebody could do that. What about nutritionally? Are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, oh man, I don't. I try to stay in my wheelhouse with that kind of stuff, you know, really, just because just people. I read probably the first 2 training books that I ever got when I got these in like high school or something like that. I got Nutrient Timing and Power Eating were the names of these 2 books that I got.
I remember Power Eating.
Power Eating was awesome. That was the first book I ever saw that talked about like supplements and like creatine and calcium and like all this other shit you needed. And like I still follow that shit now. Like I thought that was great, and it's still pretty accurate, and it's literally performance nutrition, and it just I don't like. You see these little like meal preps that people do, these little like tiny cups of like a couple of strawberries and shit in them, and like, dude, you're 245 pounds. Like you need to be like eating something else. But it's like I don't know. People are fucking crazy with that stuff. Like that, I try to avoid all that stuff like the plague. But yeah, that's some of the stuff people do with their nutrition nowadays is insane to me.
I think from what I've seen with some of the powerlifters, which is weird, right, is because we have flexibility to be able to eat more of what we want because we don't have to display abs. We don't have to show anything, right? So then the food is more 100% for recovery. That's what you eat for. So I can agree with the debate that I'm only going to eat to feed the machine. Fine, get it, whatever. You can, do other things. But anyhow, even with that being the debate or their stance is, well, you need to still fucking recover. And if you're glycogen depleted, how does that help with your recovery? At any point, I'm sure people will fucking argue with me, but come on, how's a depletion of anything, going to help with that? But it's like they've taken the extreme bodybuilding diet, then they want to apply it here. And I don't get it. Like it's football players aren't doing that. It's still an athlete that needs to recover from the demands of the sport. And that's the reoccurring theme that you see a lot of times is, they'll end up getting hurt or they'll end up not being able to recover. And then you're looking at, the little tiny, cup, whatever it is. And it's fuck whatever, just eat twice as much as, recover. If you're not recovering, something outside of training. I got better pause, but most of the time, something outside of training is the reason why you're not recovering. You're either stressed out because you don't know how to manage stress, you're not sleeping well, or you're eating like shit, you're not hydrated, whatever it is, or all of them contributing. But again, they're not going to look at that.
Oh yeah, training's 10% of it, I think. Like it really is. But it's funny, the glycogen replenishment thing, like that, like your muscle contraction speed is completely determined by how much muscle glycogen you have available. So like it's very, and I mean, you can turn different stuff into glycogen, and there's ways you can do that, and like gluconeogenesis or whatever the fuck it's called. I don't remember, but like there does seem to be a lot of like lower carb, like you said, like almost like these weird stage ready like competition diets that people are trying to get on it. There's very few. It seems like unless they're just staying off of social media and stuff, or like they're not like I don't know. I haven't seen any like newer big huge heavyweight guys in a while. You know what I mean? Like I can't really think of like. I mean, it's guys that have been doing it for a while, like Blaine Sumner. I've talked to him before about his like ridiculous like fucking steak shakes and shit that he makes. That's insane. But like, there's nobody eating like a fucking like mad dog in a meat house, anymore. It seems like I don't know if that's like to make way for this new generation of like. It seems like there's way more kind of lighter weight power lifters getting into it that have no interest in moving up a weight class or anything like that. But that's a really interesting point now that I'm thinking about it. I can't think of one. I don't know, because when I got into it in 2005, there was I remember one of the first people I met was this dude, Nick Minetti, who was a lifter back in the day in like Virginia. And it was like a 1,900 pound total and just like sleeves and just a big dude, which was weird because everybody was wearing single ply. So nobody understood why he was like not lifting without equipment on. But the guy was cartoonishly big. He looked like a fucking Ren and Stimpy character. And the guy's sitting there like eating food in the warm-up room. And then like the first nationals I ever went to, Brian Siders was there. And he walked in with a takeout bag from like Ruby Tuesdays and was like chewing on cheeseburgers while he was warming up for squats. It was like the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And then after squats, he had 2 pieces of pizza folded over that he was eating in between squats and bench press, which he was a massive human being. Like, I don't know, even going to competitions, I don't really see, don't see that. I've seen a couple like bigger dudes and stuff, but that was like the thing, like, fucking eat, like you fucking eat everything you can.
What are some of the other things that you've seen change in the warm-up area over the past 10 years? Because you're in different warm-up rooms than I'm going to be in. So you're in the IPF type of warm-up rooms or AD or USAPL warm-up rooms. And obviously things have changed, in the sport across the board, but the warm-up room's a good area to talk about. So what are some of the other things that you've seen?
Man, more people taking time, like making sure their hair looks just right than actually the last Arnold that I went to and competed at. I couldn't believe how many. Some people brought like mirrors with them, and were like, I saw people like doing their hair in the warm up room like before they were going out to lift and stuff. That was interesting. Which, to each their own, whatever's going on. I'm not holding it against anybody, but like that was just interesting. That was just interesting to me. But I don't. There seems to be almost like a lack of warm up protocol for a lot of people nowadays. I don't know if that's any different. I mean, I'm up moving around. I'm doing like high kicks. I'm rolling out on shit. I'm like, I need to warm up for about 20 minutes just to make sure like my joints don't feel like toothpicks anymore, pretty much, to get going. But a lot of people just, skipping that completely. And I don't know if that's a newer development. I feel like earlier on, I saw a lot more people doing kind of like some kind of structured warm up, at least moving around a little bit outside of a barbell before they get going. But that could just be my experience too. I don't know.
What about the camaraderie?
Well, that's really a lot different. It's interesting. Like sitting here talking to you. This is only like the second or third time I think we've ever talked in real life. Pretty comfortable conversation, and then first time I met Travis over at the gym down there and talked to him a bunch. Same thing, sit there, talk to him. He'll give you the shirt off his back. He'll let's go get some food and keep talking about training or something somewhere. There is a lack. There's almost a lack of that, and I don't know if like social media is to play. Just like you said, you're connected to everybody all the time anyway. Who cares if you have the most followers, you win, I guess. But like, there just seems to be a lack of like. I don't know, like people putting in like an extra effort to have a conversation with somebody about what they're doing. Like if I see somebody doing something ridiculous in a meet, I'm gonna make a point to go over and be like, hey, what the fuck do you do? Like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like how do you train? Like what? Like just to open that dialogue, because you never know who you're talking to or anything, or like what's going on. But I don't know. The camaraderie seems to be a little more. It seems like there's more people showing up of like tighter knit groups that don't want anything to do with anybody else that's there competing or doing anything. And that might just be my experience. But again, as the generation of lifters seems to get younger and younger, those groups seem to get tighter and tighter. I think like it really seems like it just like they don't really want to. I mean, unless they're being a spectacle, and then it's okay. Unless they're like the center of attention for everybody, and then time to put a little one-man show on or something like that. But like, that's been my experience anyway, of just like that kind of lack of. I mean, if anybody came up to a meet and was like, "Hey, like, what do you do?" I would talk to him for as long as I had time to talk to him for, like, or as many questions as they had or anything. And I feel like there's a lot of people that wouldn't do that now. You know what I mean? Yeah.
People ask me a lot of times, where do I see the sport going? What do I think about the sport? All this other kind of stuff. And my classic answer back to that is I don't do it anymore, so I'm not the person to ask. It's you need to ask the people that are still doing it, what they think. Well, you're still doing it, right? So, where would you like to see the sport go?
Well, I'm really hoping. I'm really hoping. I've seen personally a little bit of an influx of people getting back into gear and stuff, especially like single ply. And like I've mentioned Travis a couple of times, he's been getting really into single and multiply. Dude's got like 60,000 Instagram followers or something like that now. So him being like a legitimately motivational, inspirational person. I don't say that about fucking anybody ever. Like him being like legit with that stuff. That's pretty cool to see a big time guy like him getting into it. And he's been doing really well with it too. I think he's going to be blowing out some all-time world records here in the next couple of years for sure. But like, it'd be really cool to see that like have an upswing again, like back to, you know, at least get some more than the, like you said, like the same 3,000 people that have been doing it for the last
I mean, where is single ply? Because I've not looked at that. I mean, is that stagnant too, I assume? Yeah,
I mean, it pretty much has been. Like I was looking at numbers from like worlds and nationals and stuff the last couple of years, and it's been pretty much the same. But again, it seems, I don't know. It seems like more people are getting into it, but I don't know if their confidence is quite there yet to get up to something like that.
Well, it's if I'm not mistaken, the single ply is only drug tested though, right? I mean, no other federations are doing single ply. I think like USPA, I think they have a non-tested single ply, or they have a non-tested lifting and tested lifting and stuff. I think there's other places. I can't speak for like the whatever APA still exists or like WPO or anything. I'm not sure. But there's definitely a few. Like SPF is another one, and RPS is another one that I think you can do it out there as well. But so there's options for that stuff. So I think I hope that goes up, and I really think that's just a response to how fucking ridiculous the pool of athletes are now. Of just like people going like, oh, I'm pretty strong, but I'm not competitive with these top 5 fucking guys over here. So I'm going to go throw gear on because nobody's doing this right now. Would you think it's that, or do you think that there's longer longevity if you have gear?
Oh, I truly believe that for sure. But again, that kind of goes back to our other conversation about like, is the foresight quite there yet too with some people? But I've always loved lifting and equipment and stuff. So that's my whole thing anyway. But I definitely, I feel better. I recover better and everything now, especially after all these surgeries and finally getting back into some semblance of condition and training again. So I'll probably stick with it for the majority of the rest of my personal career, I guess.
How much did your training have to change with the single ply compared to the raw?
Not much for me personally. Like I can get away with. I still really like using box squats for raw training. I just put it low as shit. That's the only thing. That's the biggest difference for me anyway. Just even lower box squats, my knees feel better. I recover better from that and everything. But like, I mean, really the biggest change, I can get away with like higher and higher boxes with single ply geared stuff and still be able to squat to depth in a competition and everything.
Are your squat mechanics the same with the gear and raw?
It's a little different. I'm shaped all fucking weird. Like my body was not designed to move or lift weights or anything. I'm pretty sure. So it's because If you like take a picture of me in the bottom of a squat, it looks like I'm setting up the start of deadlift pretty much because that's where I'm strongest. Like my back and my hips are stronger than anything else. So that's actually kind of that works out pretty good with a suit on and everything and like knee wraps and everything. But not too much. I don't really change. I try to get my feet a little bit wider with a single ply squat for sure, just to get a little bit more out of the suit and everything. But nothing too crazy.
All right, tell me about a time that you had an injury, right? And and after the injury, you were, because everybody will go through this. Like they have the injury, then it sucks. Like your whole life sucks, right? Where one of them that you thought this might be time to hang it up.
Oh man, well I had again I've had tons of surgeries and injuries for a bunch of dumb shit, but I had my right knee surgery where I just had no articular cartilage left in it at all. It was awful. So had that done, and there'd never been a time before that. Actually, I had this knee surgery done. In the recovery time, I had anchors put into my left shoulder too. So that was fun recovering from both at the same time. But like, so I had this knee surgery done. And that was, I'd never taken more than 2 weeks off of training ever. Like from the time I started when I was in like middle school doing push-ups and sit-ups in my room and stuff, all the way up until then. And that was like 2000, when did I have that? 2015, I guess, is when I had that surgery. So for some stupid reason, I was not mentally into it. I was just like, this sucks. I don't even want to move. So I took 3 months totally off, and that just fucked me for probably. Again, probably took me like 3, maybe even 4 years. So the recovery time for the surgery was 2 years. So yeah, it took me probably about 3 years just to get back into training in such a way that I could write down what I wanted to do and actually complete everything in a day. And that was kind of my metric for getting better, was to be able to make a plan that I could stick to, that I know would make me stronger, and like actually be able to do that and like be competitive again. And that was that ruined me. Like mentally, this is I've always been a very intrinsically motivated person. I've always been a pretty, like, I don't know, laser focused person when it comes to this stuff, and that mentally screwed me up so bad. Like just recently, I failed a 655 squat. So that's like the most weight I've had on my back since this, and it's been like whatever, it's been 6 years since the surgery or whatever, and I failed it. And I wasn't even pissed off about it. I was like, shit, I haven't failed on a squat since this knee surgery. And I was thinking about it. I was like, Jesus Christ, I've been like too scared to put heavy weight on since then. And this is the first time I did it without even really thinking about it. So I was like, I hit the spotting chains in the bottom and like flipped off and knocked my hat off. I was on a safety squat bar and stuff. And the guy behind me was like, Jesus Christ, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, that was awesome.
It's a confidence boost, because now it's going to hold.
Yeah. I was like, man, I could do more than this. I just got in a shitty position. I fell out of the squat.
Yeah.
But like, so it's that's been brutal. And I don't know if it's just because I'm getting a little older now or what in the recovery, but like mentally, that was a mental block that I had from that I didn't realize I had. And like, I've always been convinced like my mental aspect of things is probably like my strongest competitive thing that I've got. So like, that was brutal. But like I said, that was a huge milestone for me. That was seriously like last week compared to 2015 when I messed the thing up and had to get the surgery. It's crazy.
Are you still actively coaching people now?
Like I mentioned, when I was at my busiest, I probably had like 20, 25 like online clients that I was trying to talk to all of the time. And I was working 2 jobs at the time too. Luckily, they don't monitor internet traffic or anything, or else I would have been fired from both of them. Hope they're not listening to this right now. But like, so in that again, it just, I don't know, that kind of like soured me a little bit. Exactly some of the points that you brought up earlier about like, I can't see what you're doing. You could be lying to me the entire time. Like I'm attaching my name to this, what you're doing. And I helped a lot of people get stronger and stuff and successfully. And that's like, I enjoy coaching, but I need to be in there with people. I need to see what's going on. And I was kicking around the idea of maybe getting back into it now, just because of like how easy it is to live stream things and how easy it is to like, because just like you said, but then I got to make the time to, be one-on-one with that person for, whatever it's going to take to at least get through the main lifts for the day. So just, which I'd be willing to do as well. But it's just, I kind of, and again, the state of things on the internet kind of soured me with that. The pool is so oversaturated of that stuff. And, I don't know. The people that I do make programs for now are people that I actually like lift with in person, that I can see doing everything that they're doing, and I can talk to them all the time, and I don't even charge them anything. Like most of the programming I've done has been for free for the most part, or I just help point people to resources so they can find their own stuff and figure it out. What
are some of the resources you'll point them to?
I'm a big fan. Again, a lot of the books that like Louis would recommend and stuff, like Science and Practice of Sports Training is probably the easiest read ever. Verkhoshansky put out the Special Strength Training Manual for Coaches. That's a little bit more recent book. That is a wonderful training text. There's so much good information in there. That's great. But I mean, there's tons of online stuff. Obviously, Elite FTS for like some of the, because I still remember some of the older articles that I read. Probably one of the better books I ever got for like max effort and like just explaining what the max effort method is was Jim Wendler actually wrote a book called the Max Effort Manual, and I got that, and reading that I was like, oh shit, like I'm doing this a little wrong, and started like modeling after some of that stuff, and that was pretty good. But yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff out there. Verkhoshansky actually sells a forum that's kind of active on the internet of people sharing information and stuff. which like there's I don't know who these people are that are actually like commenting on there, but they're really, really fucking smart people. You got to read through the stuff a couple of times to understand what they're saying. But like, there's all kinds of stuff out there. I've got a whole library of shit at home. What's the other one? Thomas Kurz wrote a really good book, Science
of Sport Training.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. I've read through that one. That was the first training book I ever read that actually mentioned active recovery mechanisms as being like an important part of training. So like contrast showers were mentioned in there. It's such a little stupid thing you can do in 20 minutes. It makes you feel better, you know. So there's all kinds of stuff that I like telling people to look at that they can. It's actually like readable that you can actually understand, because there's plenty that's not.
Where can people find you?
I'm on every social media, I guess. Unfortunately, I gotta step away occasionally, but I'm there most of the time. All my social media handles are Hamburger Trained.
Where'd that come from?
Nothing. When Facebook was originally out, you could put your name as anything, and then you could like. Because all you needed was like a college internet address, and my college was one of the first like 100 or so to get on there and stuff. So me and my dumbass friends were like, oh, let's make a bunch of stupid names, and then like, just kind of like see how long it takes for us to get like kicked off or something like that, or for them to tell us we have to change it. So like I had a whole slew of dumbass names on there, but when they finally opened it up to other people and they like froze your like account information where you couldn't change it like a million times anymore, mine was stuck as Hamburger Trained. So it was like the perfect alias for all of the like just basic cyber terrorism I was doing in like powerlifting forums and fitness websites and stuff. So it did stuck. So that's pretty funny. But yeah, so Hamburger Trained, just Hamburger Trained with an ED on the end of it. And then I started I've got 3 episodes out on a podcast that I started. I'm averaging about an episode every year and a half right now based on the time. But so I'm trying to get more active with that and just getting some people on there and stuff. But that's just the Hamburger Trained podcast, trying to keep it consistent with everything.
All right. I want to thank you for coming out. I've enjoyed this. It's been a good time. I want to thank you guys for listening. And as I've said before, I still don't know how to close the show. So I just say we're done.